Anime Expo!
Hey, what the hell is this?
We're just plugging Anime Expo because we were just there. Welcome one, welcome all to episode 32 of the None of Our Business podcast. We are your hosts, Philly Fanatic, Philanthropy, Philosophy, P-Money,
Fill these nuts.
Sane, Silent Tempo. We have Keenan Duncan, CNN Dunkaroos, Cianon,
CNN?
Change the channel.
Black Liberace. I don't know.
Black Liberace.
And we have a very special guest this week. Guest week. Patrick Ward.
Patrick Ward, why don't you go ahead and say hello to the world, man?
Hey guys, Patrick Ward right here.
There
Great
you
to
go.
be with my mates.
Hey. He had to let everybody know. He says
There's
mate.
the accent.
There it is.
You sounded American for a second.
I know.
He's like, oh no, I got to change that real fast.
Got to throw some more y'alls in there.
Yeah.
Love it.
Did we
Welcome.
introduce Keenan? Oh, no, right?
I did.
Oh,
I
yeah.
said CNN,
wait,
Dunkaroos.
Sorry, I just wanted to make you feel special.
That's how insignificant you are to his life. Like,
Philly forgets me in like 2 seconds.
he's like, did
Damn.
we even introduce him? Like,
Is
who
he
even
part of the
he?
show?
Who is this guy?
Oh, I thought you were rubbing it while you're
Is that how you rub one out, Keenan? Holding the one index finger
He
out?
throws up the peace sign and then he strokes it in between the feet, like his
Make
fingers.
love, not war.
Like if he's shaking off a cigar, like, or a cigarette. I don't know. You know, it could be a cigarette or a cigar.
Okay, we're starting a new
Depends.
podcast. Fuck these guys. Me and Patrick.
Yeah,
starting
just
a new
you
one.
and me, Kanan. That's
Name
all
of-
we
name
need.
of
Don't need
Keenan's
these
new
losers.
podcast.
It's
Fuck
gonna be
these
called
guys.
PNC. Patrick and cunt.
Oh, now he's getting into the
Whoa,
Aussie
whoa,
slang.
whoa. Isn't that yeah, it's a commonly used word out in
Yeah, so-
Europe, but out here it's like, don't say that.
Nah,
So they
America
say-
gets like super like fragile about
Right?
different words. I mean,
Yeah.
I would, and you can tell in the tone of voice. Like if I call Philly, you're such a cunt, but you can tell I'm joking in my voice.
Yeah.
Whereas if I have beef with you, I'll probably call you mate. Like if I'm in the club and you're like trying to start something, I'll be like, mate, settle down, mate.
We're like,
Okay.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So
But-
it's all the tone. Like that's the thing with
It is.
words.
It is so
You-
because you do say bro, like, hey bro,
Oh,
all right, bro,
yeah.
You're like bro, you better, bro,
Bro, come to my DJ.
please let me.
Keenan,
Tune in.
what is your word when you have beef? When you have beef in the club?
Crickets.
he goes silent.
Well,
That's
I
the
usually
deadliest
just-
of all. I don't say anything.
Whenever Keenan
Yeah.
goes, pardon me.
Excuse me, sir.
Excuse me, good sir.
Seriously.
why I never.
How dare he?
You actually have a podcast called like Words with
Words with Ward.
Words
yeah.
with Ward.
Yeah.
So like,
Words with Ward.
I mean, the alliteration goes without saying.
Right.
Any marketer will tell you if you can come up with some alliteration, there's a product right there to
Boom.
sell.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And yeah,
I was
no,
unaware.
the I guess you'd call it a podcast or a video series. I just
Okay.
Because you record it.
I record it
He's
usually.
throwing shade at me right now, by the way.
He's like, I actually
See,
recorded.
you
my
set up
stuff.
the camera and
Well, not even. It's literally usually doing with a Zoom or Skype or something like that. Just because I'm not in the same place as them.
Oh, okay,
I mean,
yeah,
so
yeah.
I have done it
Yeah.
live in
Mhm.
Los Angeles for people who are here, but generally it's recorded via Zoom, and it's literally just two simple questions: what is one word you would like people to use more of,
Mhm.
and one word you would like people to use less of. So the whole thing doesn't go longer than a minute.
Mm.
And the whole purpose of it was I was thinking of what's like a type of content that I can create very regularly.
Mhm.
And it was around words because I started my
new
career
t-shirt.
as a writer.
Okay.
And so it just made sense to create around a concept of I'd seen so many people, particularly in the corporate world, use words poorly and not even realize it. Like very simple words. It's never a complex word that people misuse because they're sort of so afraid of using it in the wrong way.
Right.
But it's these little words. So like my
there, and there.
well, not
No.
even that. So
Uh-huh.
my classic example of a word that I hate is just. And just is what's known as a passive qualifier. So if I send you, Keenan, an email.
How dare you say that to me?
Right. If I say, hey, Keenan, just wanted to get your feedback, I'm immediately putting myself in a position of subjugation by using that word just. It makes me sound less sure of myself. And it means that you're not going to respect me as much. You might not realize you're not respecting me as much, but you are nevertheless going to respect me less.
Regardless of, okay.
Yo.
All right. How often do we do that? I say that all the time.
Well, yeah.
Hey,
it's because
I'm
you
just
like to-
saying it.
Just get back to me.
because you like to submit. That's why, you know.
Hey, that happened one time on Sunday. All right,
It was on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay, so my word that I'd like people to use more often is engage. I love that word.
Wait. We're not doing his
I don't give
podcast
a
Hey,
right
fuck.
now.
no, I just hijacked this.
Yeah.
This is mine
Okay, so
now.
I'm gonna play. I want to play this game. I want to play this game. I'm like, oh shit, yeah.
Yeah,
I fuck
let's
with
do
that.
it.
Okay,
Engage. I
my
love
word
that.
is engage. I'd love people to start using that a lot more often because it's not used often enough, and I just like that word. Ooh, I said just, but I do. The word I'd like people to use less of. Ooh, that's a good one.
It's always the harder one.
Mm.
Seriously. The
Well, mine
more
is-
of comes pretty
Mine's pretty
natural.
easy. I go with the wrong one first and the nice one.
It's not your turn yet,
Yeah.
Keenan.
I know.
Don't
Let
be a
Joe
cunt.
That's what I
finish.
hate. That's what I
Don't be a
hate.
cunt, mate.
He doesn't even know. You
Shut
you
up.
can't use cunt and mate in the same one.
Well, that's how you know I got beef with you and I'm playing.
Let me.
Should we come back to you,
Oh,
Jeff?
yeah. See, he's
we'll come back to me on that.
That's
one.
what I picked
You're
up,
right,
all
though.
right?
You're
Okay,
right. It is a
okay.
little
So
hard.
fuck you. All right?
Is that the word you like to use more? Keenan? Okay, go ahead. Keenan.
Swear at people more
I
often.
got it.
Retarded. Retarded.
You call me that all the time.
I never call you retarded.
Oh, yes, you do.
Name one time.
Yesterday.
I didn't even talk to you yesterday.
Swear I
He's
called
a
you
new
retarded.
convert to this position.
Fuck
He's like,
say that.
when? And then Joe thinks about it. He goes
Usually-
back to a couple of
When
seconds.
I- when I-
retard.
When I do something stupid, it's usually in the comfort of
I
just
never
me
call
and
you
him.
retarded because I don't use that word myself. I don't.
Now, is that like a politically
I'm correct.
correct thing, or
I just don't like the word. I think it's. no,
Why
He
you
literally
found it.
used the word to say that.
No, I really just don't like the word. I think it's demeaning. I think it's demeaning.
Probably
to
one of the
people,
meanest
yeah.
things you could say.
Yeah, it is.
Well, there,
Personally,
Coming
there,
from
there
this
are
guy?
ways. I mean, that's the great thing about insults. There are so creative uses of them that you can use a better word
Exactly,
than
exactly,
that.
than
You can
using-
still use, because often I find there's an interesting thing about swearing that a lot of people associate swearing with people who are uncouth or people who are less educated, and yet they've found in tests people who they ask you write down like 20 swear words or something, as many swear words as you can come up with. And those who have better vocabularies can actually write down more swear words.
Of course.
So yeah, I
Of course.
listed 100 of them on our
Yeah.
last podcast.
Now, can you define uncouth? Because I'm a little offended
Okay.
because I don't know what it means.
Uncouth is like
That's right. That's what I thought.
it's like lower
Unpopular.
class.
Yeah.
Lower class is more the connotation of
Why
uncouth.
I never.
All right, what's yours?
Wait.
What? I'm
wait.
not him.
Oh,
no,
Second class citizen over
no,
here.
you guys skipped me because I apparently was going in.
Abraham
too
Lincoln
strong.
doesn't give a fuck.
All right,
you
so
know?
I'll go last. It's
Okay.
okay.
No,
It's
no,
all right.
Keenan,
That's fine. It's fine. Let him go
Okay.
last. Go.
All right.
No, wait. Let me say something. No.
He's like, no, but wait, FOMO.
No, we'll do counterclockwise.
So
It's
what
cool.
word? What
It's a
word
word.
do you? And also, I believe now this
Why are you
is
looking at me so intently?
this
when
is
you
your
say
way
that?
of being able to find out like how many more swear words are out there in the world, or who knows? You've got
Oh,
some
so-
secret plot.
I'm actually recording all of this for a book.
Are you?
Well, I know. Actually,
No, yeah,
I'm not actually
quite
joking
literally.
here.
Yeah.
So when I started doing the series, and first I was literally doing it as a way of I could interview someone, ask them like to connect over this. I've got this series, and it would mean that people wouldn't be averse to jumping on the phone with me
Right.
because often,
Sales.
you have that
Yeah.
right. You have that.
Boom.
The connection request goes out on LinkedIn. They accept, and then you're trying to get on the phone with them. But people are like, oh, I don't have time. But if you're saying I'm doing something for you, I'm doing this interview series, and I want to shout you out, people are like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then inevitably,
They're more susceptible to it.
right.
Just-
And then after the fact, you can have a chat, and then, oh, maybe we could work together. So there's the subtle thing under the radar. But after I'd done about 10 of these, and I'd always wanted to write a book, but like everyone who wants to write a book, I was like, when am I going to write a book? What do I write a book about?
Dude, I wrote a book and it's just sitting there.
Right. And then
You
I
wrote
just
2 books.
3 books, yeah.
And then
Oh,
I just
excuse
figured,
me.
like, well, hold on. If I'm going to the effort of doing this series anyway, and people are coming with all these insights, might as well just turn the stuff into a book. So
Mm.
Yeah,
Hell
that's
the
pretty
fuck
dope.
yeah.
What's the book going to be called?
it'll be like words with Ward. It'll keep
Oh,
the
okay, cool.
consistent
Nice.
branding of
Branding.
that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Look at this.
I'm all
guy.
about branding.
That's your job, right? You're in advertisement.
Yeah, I've been in advertising for just over 6.5 years now. So
Nice.
yeah,
That's a career.
And what? Yeah, no
It's
shit.
a career. Like,
Yeah.
I think Keenan's just trying to avoid.
he
answering
really
his
is
words.
avoiding.
No, I'm not
I want to
avoiding-
know his
It's-
words.
it's-
Keenan,
Phil's
have some
turn.
words.
Okay,
with
Phil,
Ward.
I have words,
You hit it.
but you
hit
called
it.
me out. So,
All right, so
you know.
as you know, I'm never prepared, but yet somehow I'm always prepared.
Okay.
Okay, so words I would like to see used more.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
That's more than.
Ooh,
one
actually,
word.
that's actually harder for me. Words I would like to see used more would probably be words I would like to see myself use more is gratitude, like grateful.
Is that what it's supposed to be? Like
No, but
ourselves or in
that's
general?
It can be
that's just something. Yeah.
Honestly, the whole point of it, I give the people the questions in advance, but I like to. That's why I love this, because I'm throwing it on all of you guys right now.
Mhm.
Because honestly, what you instinctively say says a lot about you and what you value, and that I think honestly develops a stronger human connection between all of us.
Mm.
Because I've sort of seen this era come where, back in the past, it seemed, at least to me, it seemed like we were able to debate people from different viewpoints in civil, constructive ways, and yet somehow our society's become more and more polarized, and that we've lacked the critical thinking to be able to have like honest, sometimes tough, but honest conversations with one another.
Absolutely.
And so I'm sort of doing my own little thing to try and get people to do
Improve
that.
the world.
Engage.
Mm.
To engage, yeah, really, but not just engage, like engage their own thoughts,
Right.
and engage with others that maybe they wouldn't otherwise do. And I think we're very susceptible here in LA that we're in at this little liberal bastion, if you will,
Mm.
and that's great that everyone thinks in a certain way and has certain values, but I think we can't forget there are people who might not have the same values as us. They're still good people.
Yeah.
We can't just dismiss them as
Right.
racists, bigots, whatever we want. There's still a person behind that.
Mm.
Yeah. No, absolutely. You're right.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's what the comment sections are for in the Pornhub.
Pornhub
That's how you really get
See,
together.
Speaking of words revealing
With
who
that,
people are.
here's the thing about that though. That means you have to create an account, and then, I just don't have time for that.
That's how you.
You're
truly
acting like
engage.
Keenan doesn't have a premium membership.
Keenan's like,
I kind of want to. Do you have a premium membership?
no comment.
he's like, look, man, I had to cut Netflix and Hulu because this is just a lot more important.
Hey, it's called prioritizing the allocation of your funds.
which Keenan's working on.
I think it's crazy that we don't have to pay. Like, porn is just free.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Absolutely. I remember when you had to get magazines, and
Yeah.
that was it.
But a lot of stuff they want you to subscribe. Isn't that?
Why?
Yeah, I don't know.
Hey.
You have to pay for Netflix.
How much
and Hulu.
time does someone
what-
really have for porn in their lives?
It's like, oh, sign up, subscribe, and you can watch the whole 40-minute video. I'm like, yo, I only need 5.
If I'm in a good place alone and I've got the right temperature,
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
give us.
All
your-
right,
your
right,
word
right.
you like.
So grateful's
yeah.
the word.
I'd like to see myself use grateful more because I know a lot of people are throwing it around. Oh, I'm grateful for, I'm transformed because of all the new age shit. But I really think real gratitude is something that's really hard to achieve, especially for I'm a person that is constantly on the move, constantly doing things. So my ability to appreciate anything is near nil. It's almost non-existent because nothing I do has ever, and dare I say, may never be good enough. It's damn near a disease, really, for me.
For yourself.
I've seen that
Mm.
about you.
For
And not
yourself.
only that, but because you're such like a hustler and looking to like get onto the next thing because you're, wanting to be productive all the time, that you don't take the step back. And I totally get that. I really relate to that because I was often, and I'm still struggling with that now. During college, I did 2 days of college. I did 1 day working at the university. I did 2 days working at an ad agency, and I did the 2 weekend days in the pool teaching kids how to swim. And I did that all through college just because I needed to hustle and make money. And I was grateful that I did that, but only at the very end, because that's what led me to come to America the first 2 times. And ultimately, when I got the opportunity to move here permanently, how there was no question. But it can be awful in that way that it can take years before that hindsight strikes you of like, oh, I actually have a lot to be grateful for, even though I didn't feel it at the time. So I'm 100% with you, Philly. Trying to work through, even if you don't know where the process is taking you, at least having some faith in that process and being grateful that you have the opportunity to partake in that process.
Right.
It's hard.
Like you said, you won't realize it in hindsight. You will.
You'll literally realize, like, even coming to America was the scariest thing. Like I talk about it as a fun story now, but literally I left 100% of my family, 99% of my mates. The mates I did have were on the East Coast because I was at
New York,
the New York and DC with George Washington. Right. So that was an actual full exchange, whereas the UCLA one I did was actually with other Australian students. So didn't meet a whole lot. And I had a job. I had a job in Sydney that I could have been comfortable with, but still I said, let's just take a chance on America. Let's see what happens.
Fuck it.
How old were you when you did that?
Oh, what was it? 2016. So, 22 at the time. So I just finished college, and I literally sort of thought of it in 2 ways. One, if this is a raging success, this is going to be phenomenal. But 2, if it's going to be a failure, it'll be a funny story.
Yeah,
but I will have to drag myself back to Australia and keep doing my thing. And everyone said, nah. Why are you doing this? The whole family was against it. They said, no, go to Melbourne. At least you're still in Australia. Then go to London. Europe's the way to be. Don't go to America. Why are you going to LA? That's so superficial. And I'm like, yes, LA has that element, but there are people here who do have depth. You just need to.
Let me know when you
Well, I'm not speaking about you, Kenan. I'm more speaking about Philly. But,
trash ass traitors, all of you.
We wanted to.
This is actually a
bring you
meeting.
This
is a real intervention.
Patrick here is going to be replacing you, Kenan, and
Kenan has this underlying fear that every guest we have is going to replace him.
You're just going to have to just be the stool guy and just setting up like a real producer. You just won't be part
We're
of the show.
promoting you to producer, Kenan.
Thanks.
It's definitely a promotion.
That's definitely a story. Like you said, if you would have failed, it'd be like, well, just go home and call it a day.
I was literally about a month. I didn't have any savings. I came with about $2,000, if that, which immediately went because the first place that I stayed in wasn't going to have a $500 security deposit. They're like, you have no rental history, so we're going to charge you the first 2 months rent. Please give us $5,000. I was like, damn. So I was immediately in a credit card debt, and a very expensive debt. Wow. And then so for maybe I was a month out from going, I have no fun, literally zero funds, but had one company, a financial company, wasn't necessarily ideal, but it took a chance on me, kept me afloat. Then an app developer took another chance. Now doing a bit better. And now where I'm sitting, it's 3 years in the process, or 3.5 years now, but I'm making 3 times more than what I would be if I was still in Australia. So, but only now am I really reaching that full level of gratitude, knowing that my decision is validated. I made the right call. But if you'd asked me,
and now you have the luxury, if you want to go home, you just go home comfortably.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm okay.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
go back, more of a success story than you left.
Literally,
it probably changed people's minds.
Oh, it still it didn't for a long time.
Mm.
And my parents still kind of wince a little when I talk about LA as home. But this was the thing. So last year around Black Friday, I saw there was $500 return flights on Qantas, very nice airline, and I was like, I'm jumping on this. So I got this for Easter of this year, and I decided, okay, it's been 3 years. It's time to go home, at least see some friends, see some family.
Oh yeah.
And I did that, and even so, they knew I was a bit like not okay with the current job, how they'd made some promises and hadn't delivered on those. And I had enough self-respect to go, well, if you're not delivering now, when are you going to deliver? And then from there, they sort of said, oh, so you're moving back to Australia. And then literally, I think the second day I was there, I got an offer through a Skype call for this current job that I'm doing now.
Congrats.
And and as it got close to the end of it, once again, I started saying, I'm going home. LA feels like home now. Sydney no longer feels like home. It felt like an overseas trip. That's,
Los Angeles.
Bear's like,
woo, America.
Fuck yeah.
Speaking of America, the women's U.S. team beat
That's
the
right.
Netherlands
Yay.
today, 2-0. Let's fucking go, America!
Talking about soccer? Is that soccer?
Yeah,
soccer.
Okay.
And
Women's.
I don't know
I
sports.
believe you'll find that's football,
Oh,
because it is
football.
played. It is played with the feet,
foot.
and it's a ball, not hand egg.
and LAFC beat Vancouver last
Okay.
night, 6-1.
Nice.
Savage.
But we're glancing over that because nobody cares. So back to Philly.
And we were, and LAFC was like, bah, 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 bah. And Vancouver's like, come in,
Not in the face. All right, in the face.
And now we go, we're padded long enough. So Philly, you must have your word by now.
I know you.
Wait, is it-
Honestly,
that's the worst word?
I was so engaged
Ah,
in what we
jeez.
were doing.
Yeah.
That I
Y'all gotta
totally
start using that often once.
Yeah.
but no, grateful and being in a place of gratitude. I really do believe it's a source of a lot of unhappiness. Is the inability to really see what's there for you. But,
Now, what's your word?
the word that I'd like to see used less is drumroll.
Keenan.
Actually, it's not so much. It's not so much a word as it is a phrase, if I may.
Yeah.
And I think
I've had people use phrases.
Okay.
It's fine. It doesn't have to just
I
be
think
a
it's
word.
the phrase "I love you" because more often than not, in particular in romantic situations, people say it when they don't really mean it. And I know that it's fun when you're in a honeymoon phase of a interaction with people to say those kinds of things. But what I think what I believe people are referring to more often than not is not the person more so than the actual circumstances and the effects of having been in a relationship, as opposed to the person. Because to really love a person, you have to even love all their flaws. And when you don't love them, still love them. And that's why I don't say it until I can say that.
Wow. That is like next level human consciousness right there. Because but you speak to the heart of what I'm trying to do with this series. And that is get people to think consciously about the words that they use or the phrases that they use. Because I always say that it does three things, right? The words you use affect how you think about the world, how others perceive you, but more importantly than all of those, how you see yourself. And that is why even those little words, if you can change them up, you can either be supporting yourself to reach a place of gratitude, or you can be hindering yourself and sabotaging yourself. So a classic example I use is if someone asks how your day is going, a classic response might be not bad. Now that's a double negative, and it's actually inadvertently putting you in a negative mindset, even though it's still a quote unquote positive phrase. It's still it's a negative way of putting it. So a better way would just be, good, all right, great. Use that scale of words. I think a classic thing about America is that everything has to be amazing, and yet where's the happiness? A lot of people seem very struggling with the happiness, and yet they're always saying, oh, this is amazing, or that was hilarious. And that's the funny thing. When people ask me, like, how was this particular meal? I was saying, it's pretty good. Like, only pretty good? Like, why wasn't it not better? It's like, no, I'm just putting it within the context of all human emotion, so that when I do say something is incredible or something is amazing, then it actually means something.
Yeah,
There's actual weight behind that. There's gravitas behind that.
Yeah. I agree with
But
you.
that starts from using them consciously and not flippantly.
Right.
So I love that, Philly.
Usually when I get asked, like, how's my day coming, I just say I've had a solid day. I've had a pretty solid day.
Solid is good.
It's been solid. It's been a complete day.
Good.
Ups and downs.
It's been a day like Viagra.
But it's been a solid day. It's just been rock hard. It's like
just
I
four
did it.
4 hours.
Then you have to consult your doctor.
Straight up did it. I did it. That's usually how much.
If your day
my
is
day
solid
goes-
for more than 8 hours, contact your physician.
My day goes in 4-hour sections. So yeah, I know how you feel.
Oh, God.
So Patrick, now that you have all the information you need for your book, I don't think we need you anymore. He found the closing portion of his book. That's how he's going to close it out.
Thank you for coming to our TED Talk.
No, I'm kidding.
I love you all.
Oh.
I just flipped him off. Fuck you, Keaton. Okay, give us yours.
All right,
My
Keaton.
worst word is empowered.
Oh,
You see that used less?
No. Cheat. Patrick did ask me this when we were hanging out months
Back in the
ago.
day.
So I already knew my 2 words when I said rap.
And they're still relevant.
Oh yeah. They never change. Almost like I was waiting for someone to ask me that. I'd be like, and it's like,
Ooh.
But
He's actually been desperate. He's been pining, saying like, "When are we
He's like,
organizing
okay,
this, man? It's been 3 months."
That's why he let me go.
He's like, one day somebody's gonna ask me what my favorite word
And
is.
I'd be like,
I want the word I
You
want.
took the
these
engram
things.
test, right? What was the number that you had again?
Oh God.
Was it 7 or 9?
There's
Oh, he
7.
took the
7.
Ian.
Yeah.
7.
So you,
The
yeah,
Ian-
the enneagram
Yeah, it was
test.
7.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 7,
I
yeah.
forgot what I was, but anyway, the worst word, the word I would like to see. No, I don't mean the word I like to see less is the word wrong. I hear wrong being used so haphazardly and too easily to toss out the justification of somebody's thought process, especially on opinionated subjects and topics. Even if it is sometimes can get scientific, a lot of people would still say people are doing things wrong or you're doing something the wrong way. And it doesn't mean you have to encourage somebody positive if they are having errors, but to say something that's wrong really is very dismissive, especially using
Well, it shuts
opinionated
down the
subject.
argument right then and there,
Mhm.
and it doesn't facilitate people to engage.
And it happens a lot in the
Right.
engineering and science community.
Only
Yeah.
Siths deal in absolutes, right? No. Is it?
So
Damn
anyway,
it,
it was
Keaton.
Damn it, Phil. No, the Jedi reference. You guys didn't.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, I got it. I
Everybody
got it.
that was the wrong statement.
That was the wrong. Yeah.
God, okay, let's just turn off.
So
But, yeah.
you said it happens a lot in the scientific community.
Yeah, heavily, very heavily, because it's a lot. It's a very yes or no. The way we're brought up is either this is the right way or this is the wrong way. It's very
Sounds a lot like religion. Yeah.
But
Show
any
never
sort of
misses an opportunity.
Organizational
Take
community of
shots
some
at
sort.
religion.
But it's also spread obviously outside of the science and engineering community. I see it a lot. Politics, economics, stuff like that. The conversation I had about the value of the dollar in the class, and everybody was saying I was wrong and stuff like that. So that word is definitely a big down putter.
Wrong.
Obviously, being a black person, there's plenty of other words out there that are wrong, but not wrong, but that are not good to use. not appropriate, but wrong is just someone that, especially like you're saying on personal experiences, being told I'm wrong on almost everything, and it's just sort of like
you speak to a really good point of, I always like to say, and this comes back to like emotional intelligence, whether you agree with someone or not, it's really important to conceptualize validating the feelings first. And the reason that you validate someone's feelings first is because that's what they're feeling in that moment. Like, that's the thing about emotions, is that you need to understand that unless you address a person's emotional needs first, particularly in a heightened emotional state, they're not going to be receptive to having a conversation beyond that. So to merely dismiss them with statements like you're wrong,
Mhm.
you're immediately a barrier to connection, really. So why not start from a place of validating that person's feelings, letting them know it's okay to feel feelings? And I think we can all relate to this as men who have been told, from a young age, men don't have feelings. Men need to be strong. Men just,
don't touch
only
her.
women feel feelings, and we don't.
Right.
And it's wrong to do that, because the funny thing is, when you actually allow yourself to feel your feelings and just process them, you're actually able to get past them sooner. And I found this from very personal experience of when I've given myself the space to do that, then I can look at myself and look at my actions almost from a third party independent observer, going like, okay, Patrick, I understand that you were sad in this moment, but now you felt that sadness. What are you going to do next? And it gives you like a course of action in which to remedy whatever the thing is that made you upset or happy or angry or whatever other emotion it is. But if you don't allow that, if you just merely suppress that, then it's going to manifest itself in very negative ways, whether it's in outwardly, aggressive ways that hurt people around you, particularly loved ones, or it's going to manifest itself in a way in which literally the body takes on that stress. That's the funny thing. Stress is, we talk about stress, and particularly in America, where a lot of people seem stressed with work or financial obligations or whatever it is. But the real damaging part of stress is how it infuses itself in our bodies and actually makes ourselves less healthy.
Cortisol.
Yeah, exactly.
So you got to release it every morning and night,
Release what?
Sometimes
you gotta release a couple of times a day.
Sometimes 3 or 4 times a day. I don't know.
So your hand gets tired.
Then you just switch to the other hand. Everyone knows the other hand doesn't work.
Sometimes it gets sensitive.
But to add on to that super quickly before I get into the word I'd like to be used more often, is that because of hearing that word, I myself try not to disagree or say things wrong with a lot of people myself. I actually take parts in a lot of both sides of the aisle, where I would hear people out first or something like that before I jump to a crazy conclusion, even though if I have one in my head already. I take the effort to try and not come up with something finite before I hear it. But to continue on to the word I like to hear used more often is the word queef. I like the word queef. Queef is not being used as often as it should. It's a very polite and nice word. It's not insulting to anybody. It's a form of action that two bodies have to make. A connection, a loving.
Is it two bodies?
Well, yeah.
Keenan, what do you think a queef is?
Queef is when the air is getting trapped inside.
Have you ever touched a titty?
It feels like sandbag.
40-year-old virgin.
No, it's the air that gets trapped in, and then it gets released. When there's some
it doesn't
loosages.
always require two bodies.
Well, I like to, in my head, imagine two bodies doing it instead of solo. Because then where am I at? I like to be included.
You just can't get your Jones off.
I know. It doesn't work. I mean,
so you're a fan of the queef beyond the word?
Yeah, especially when inanimate objects don't queef. At least I don't think they queef. I guess they could queef, depending on how hard I'm putting my pressure. But anyway, not that I've experienced it or anything.
Jeez Louise.
Love
it. I love it. I didn't think I was going to live it this much, but I do.
When I first heard it in high school, I thought it was super funny. I didn't even know what it was. And so I found out later what it was. And I was like, oh, shit.
Because he was like,
he's been keeping this word since high school.
See how long I've been waiting to say
it? The secrets of the universe are found in a queef.
Pretty much. Queef. See how it rolls off the tongue and the mouth. You have that at the, you get the nice little sound effect.
You can David Attenborough it. Today we shall watch.
As a whole world.
The spider monkey.
Do you know David Attenborough? The narrator? Yeah.
I mean,
I like that word.
Did you hear about David Attenborough, the scientific ship that was the British government was naming I think it was an Antarctic research vessel, and they ended up calling it the SSS Attenborough or whatever it was called.
Okay, yeah.
But when they put it to the public,
Yes.
big mistake. It was
was like
the number one name was because some radio DJ said, "Why don't we just call it Boaty McBoatface?"
Yeah, Boaty McBoatface. Yeah,
And it was
won.
It won.
Yeah, it won. And they're like, "No, we're just gonna call it David Attenborough." But it was Boaty McBoatface.
That's hilarious.
I don't think I get that, and I'm not following why. I don't know. I don't really understand.
Okay,
because I don't know who
so-
David Attenborough. I mean, I know
David
the
Attenborough,
voice, but-
yeah. He's basically like a wildlife documentary.
Yeah,
yeah.
narrator. He's like,
Right, which is what I presumed. But why is that Bodie McBoatboat? I don't.
Well,
know.
okay,
So that's what the public wanted to call it,
Oh.
and then the British government or whatever said, "Yeah, I don't care. We said that we were going to go with the public."
Yeah,
the
but-
public vote, but we're not going to. We're just going to overrule you guys on this
Yeah.
one and call it
We're just
SS
gonna-
Attenborough.
Yeah,
Because what kind of respectable government would have an SS Bodie McBoatboat, right? Yeah, okay.
Hilarious. I like it.
I
Oh,
figure if
man.
this was in this country, then
We would.
Hey,
Oh, we
guys,
would-
yeah,
we
fucking
presidents,
would.
yeah. It would be easy to remember. Tremendous names,
Yeah.
huge
Yeah.
results.
We're for the people. Oh gosh.
It's how I won. It's how we all win.
Yeah.
so much winning.
Yeah. So much
Everybody
winning. Tremendous winning.
Is everybody saying that outside of the U.S.? You know, a little bit sarcastically, congratulations on your new president, kind of thing. Like, very.
Yeah.
Like,
So
how do we get?
I've had some very interesting perspectives, and it's been very interesting to see from both someone living here
Mm.
and someone obviously still receiving the outside echo chamber, if you will, because there's basically two very distinct views on America. There's America's view on itself. There's America's
Probably is like redundant.
well, no, but it still is important to consider how a country perceives itself, and more importantly, America being a collection of what I'd like to call miniature countries.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, in terms of it's LA is very different to the Midwest, is different to the South.
Right.
And then from there, but the international community, at least certainly the Western world, perceives it in a pretty unilateral way. There was a lot of hope and aspiration under Obama, but now we've sort of regressed to the rest of the world sneering at America the same way it sneered under Bush. And that, there was a lot of jokes made at its expense. And the thing is, like, family going, "Oh, like, how are you living under his tyranny?" and all that sort of thing. And, while I certainly do not agree with everything that Trump has done, in a weirdly selfish way, it just hasn't affected me.
I was going to ask that.
But that's the thing.
Yeah.
And this really speaks volumes to the system that was put in place, through the Constitution, through the balance of powers. I mean, my two majors in college were marketing and government, and the government was a concentration in American politics. So through that, I really saw how all these checks and balances were very deliberately put in to avoid any, sort of big shift in power. So while I certainly disagree with, his rhetoric and on a number of different issues, from a personal standpoint, he hasn't actually done that much. And I think
He hasn't done anything, really.
but because it really speaks to that, really, if you're looking at elections that you really should be voting in, they should be like your city
Your local.
elections, your
Yeah.
local
State.
council,
Okay.
even to your state, because that has a far bigger impact on your life
Mhm.
than the federal government does.
Absolutely.
Mm.
I agree with you. And then back to the point where you were saying that the US is really just an accumulation of a bunch of smaller countries, because the West Coast is incredibly different from what happens in the East or the South or any of these other portions of the country. And that's what I was saying about there being any type of revolt or any type of uprising. It'd be too difficult to do because none of us agree with each other.
Unless it was aliens.
Well, we don't know that either.
The biggest miracle I find is that the US is one country, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I mean, and to your point, I know that the Texas Congress, I believe, puts a bill every single year to secede from the union. And each time it's like narrowly defeated. I mean, when I first found that out, I was like, that is the most Texas thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
I went there just the other day.
No
Coming
way.
out of the air, we had to visit my sister
Oh,
over the
yeah.
weekend. And just coming out of the airport, there were 8 gun clubs. 8 gun
They had
clubs,
booths.
big billboards letting you know it was 2 miles out, 3 miles out.
Come get your weapons over here.
It's not a joke.
Sounds
You can
horrible.
walk around in a Walmart with an open carry just out there. People order cheeseburgers with a gun sitting on their side, and it's not a cop.
Can I get a side of bullets with that, please?
Yeah.
Funny you mentioned that. My quick thought on guns. Like, I was never a particular fan of guns before coming here, but I thought, you know what?
Halo.
No,
I was like,
no.
like an 80 at home.
No, but here's the thing. I thought, well, look, let me put myself in a different perspective, because clearly there are people here who love guns, like really love guns.
That's right.
So, so I went to a
Yeah.
gun range. I, spoke with the people, shot a gun, and all that.
What did you shoot? Yeah,
I think it was a Glock,
nice.
because
Did it feel smooth.
because it felt
Did you tilt
well.
it to its side? Did you, like,
It made me feel
rotate
like Beverly Hills Cop, which is one of my favorite
Did you do
films.
the pelvic thrust while you were shooting? Like, bah, bah, bah.
I've never held one, never touched one, never shot one.
But still don't like them. And I had that experience. I spoke with those people, still nice people. But
It's
again,
a good spread.
how's the power? Did you feel a lot of power?
no, that's
No.
the thing. All
Okay.
I felt was this is a destructive weapon that shouldn't exist.
I'd be
But
out of
I'm
a
glad
job.
that I did it, so I had that
Fair enough.
experience.
I should do
Yeah,
the
for the
same.
sake of doing it,
Yeah.
just to reassert your
Your-
position.
yeah.
On
Right. It's almost like,
Because you could have been wrong, but after seeing for yourself,
well,
you
it's
said, well,
making yourself slightly uncomfortable.
right.
Really. I mean, and this, and
That's
not
respectable.
not
Yeah.
even as something as dangerous as guns, but just as a general
Religious views,
right, as a
political views.
a general way of being is get comfortable being uncomfortable. And the thing is, being uncomfortable is not actually that hard. Like, okay, maybe it feels awkward for a second,
Mhm.
but you might learn something. And that's really the source of how we as a species can, I would hope, level up our consciousness.
Level
because-
up.
Yeah, I'm
Because-
uncomfortable right now.
As you
weird.
should
I told
be.
you to go to the bathroom before we
I
started.
didn't want to go. All right,
Jesus,
Jeez.
Keenan.
I can hold it. I swear. I
Oh,
think.
jeez, Keenan. It's impossible getting a complete thought out on this podcast because someone will say something to derail it.
Oh yeah,
That's the whole
that's what it's all
point.
about.
That's the
You
whole
can't have like a
point.
dead. Can't be too serious.
That's true.
We already had that a couple.
That's true because the
episodes.
people driving in the car, they're like, "Oh man, I should really change my life." It's that fart. Oh man, that was close. That was actually going to change.
I almost had some self-awareness.
Yeah.
Dodge that one.
But see, the U.S. and our as crazy as we are with our guns. I mean, when I hear stories about where you can go to certain places, and I know I haven't.
Still going through puberty over here.
Keenan's
All right.
actually 15
I
years
haven't-
old.
It's part of the blip. You guys haven't seen
No,
Spider-Man.
it's okay. But as you can go to certain places in Vietnam, I think in Vietnam, where you can like get like a grenade launcher or an M16 and mold down these like animals and cows and stuff
that's
like
right.
that.
It's fucking
We
ridiculous.
don't have that in the U.S. as far as I know.
Do you want to shoot a cow?
No, but I'm just saying that
with a bazooka.
That's what I'm saying. The seriousness that we take on our guns, there's some
levels
there's
to that
levels to
shit.
this because we don't have a gun range where you can shoot up a cow with a rocket launcher. You know,
No, instead
or
we have farms where
that
we
you
slaughter
know
them
of.
for our
that's what I'm saying.
food.
That I know of. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe that isn't true. I don't know.
I mean, that is true that while we don't have ranges where you can do that in Australia, farmers are allowed to get guns, even though we banned most guns
Oh, that's right.
after 1996. It was a massacre in Port Arthur, which was a
Mhm.
tourism hotspot. I think about 30 people died in
Mhm.
that.
We've had like 8 of those this year.
Yeah, right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
You've had plenty of them. But farmers are still allowed because there's a lot of pests.
I was gonna
Mostly,
say-
mostly introduced by Europeans.
Yeah.
So like a lot of cats, like feral cats, dingoes, cane toads.
Mhm.
Oh, you can
I
watch
saw- you
some.
can
You
run
can
them
watch.
over.
You can watch some great videos
I saw
on
that.
YouTube of like people running over or
Yep.
shooting cane toads.
Cane
because-
toads, and these are
They were-
toads, actual
Yeah.
toads.
They did a
Huge-
segment on John Oliver.
Are they
about it.
big?
Yeah, they're about this big. I realized.
Yeah,
Okay,
It's a Pokemon.
I realized this is audio,
I
so
know.
put 2 hands together. That's the size of
Oh,
a
okay.
cane toad. But they were brought over because we had cane sugar and we had these flies. So the
Oh,
cane
that's why they're
toads,
Okay.
cane toads ate the flies, but
Yep.
now there are too
Because
many of them.
It's not
So
trying to play
Now
God.
they're all
I
over.
was reading in Sapiens like how Australia was really one of the last places to be touched because of the development of Homo sapiens across our history. It took a while for us to actually be able to reach over to the Australian islands. So there was a lot of animals that were developed and bred independently of the rest of the world and wasn't as touched. And that's why we have so many strange creatures, like even marsupials. You know,
right, it's why we have emus. It's why we have cassowaries, platypuses, koalas,
I mean,
kangaroos, all those.
when I
sort
see
of things.
kangaroos and how buff they look, like you
Oh.
could literally get into a fist fight.
Oh,
And they'll
off
take
the
you out.
noob.
you want a story about kangaroos?
You fought
Oh,
one?
No, I didn't
Oh.
fought one, but this is a testament to how strong they are. So my uncle owns a farm and he was driving along in a Toyota Hilux, so big pickup truck, and he sees out of the corner of his eye this kangaroo, and it's just like bouncing along. He's like, thinks nothing of it, keeps driving, bouncing on a little bit closer, jumps over a fence, rears up its legs. This is how it like fights during mating season, and kicks over his Toyota Hilux. They are, and the truck like rolls a couple of times. He's
Wow.
fine.
Holy
He's okay.
shit.
Yeah.
But like, that's how freakishly strong these animals are. They are not to be messed with.
Mm.
And there was that guy who punched a kangaroo because it was bothering its dog. Holy shit,
Yeah.
that guy escaped with his life.
Yeah.
Pretty
They're,
much.
They could kill you with
yeah,
one
they're,
kick.
they're, I mean, almost everything. We've many Americans have talked about this at length, but almost anything in Australia will kill you if given the chance.
They're like,
Why do you think I left?
It's Jurassic Park was based off Australia.
they're like pages and videos and just dedicated to like all the dangerous shit that happen that
Mhm.
of animals. That
What was
that
Jeff
exist in
Corwin
Aus-
thinking?
Have you come close to like those poisonous snakes and stuff like
I
that?
almost stepped on. So we were going for a bushwalk, what
Mm.
you guys call a hike.
Take a hike.
we're going for a bushwalk,
bushwalk.
and almost because you're walking through the
Yeah,
bush.
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
it's a simple name.
No, believe me, it makes more
So
sense.
we're kind of straightforward.
Yeah.
And I almost stepped on this huge snake. It must have been about 25 feet long.
Damn.
I like that you said feet instead of like meters or
Well, I
What
was
is
going to
that?
put it into meters, but like I figured for your audience,
It was like 3 meters long.
I can
Fuck
do
this
pretty much
audience.
every conversion except for temperature. Like
Oh,
I can do
Celsius and
well
Fahrenheit?
because if you tell me it's 80 degrees, I'm like, do I need a sweater or not? Like tell me that
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
Like I don't know what
Yeah.
80 feels like.
Yeah.
But yeah, almost stepped on it. Brother like yanked me back. Was like, don't go
Mhm.
there. Sort of reared up its head, looked at me.
It's
stayed-
20 feet long.
Yeah,
I was like, "What's up?"
I literally just
you want some of this?
I just stayed still and it
Yeah.
slithered off into the.
Fuck
yeah.
that.
That was
Yeah.
pretty freaky.
Ran into a
Damn.
rattlesnake once during one of my bushwalks way back in the day. Dude, I swear to God, I just remember hearing, but the
Those are
feeling,
creepy.
the feeling was so unreal, it shook my core. Like I immediately stopped. Like something primal in me knew.
Oh yeah, that's definitely like amygdala. Like,
Yeah.
work.
My
Yeah.
whole body said no, and I was like, "Oh shit!" And me and my buddy Joseph, who I was rolling with, he moved on to like South Africa now. He whatever. But anyways, we were on this hike, this bushwalk, and that I will never forget how immediately paralyzed I was at the sound of that.
You almost feel unreal. Like
It's not a baby rattle.
no,
Yeah.
it's the same feeling, and you're like you just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
But honestly, that is the best thing you can do with a snake. Don't move at all, because if you make any movement, they'll like
Oh, yeah.
come after you. So
Yeah, it's the
just
same thing when I would walk in it wasn't be a bushwalk, but like when I'm walking through my neighborhood and I see like a gangster on the side of the street.
Same
like-
thing. So there was a guy named Rattlesnake in my hood
Yeah.
on 6-0.
It's frightening.
Good. I just felt, I was paralyzed
And
immediately.
he was like, "Ooh, ah!"
Yeah, he had a baby rat.
and his fingers were motioning
He had
some
a
sort of
pacifier.
cryptic passage.
Yeah.
Hey,
But
did
yeah.
you guys feel the earthquake?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of
Oh,
nature stuff.
man.
Oh.
Let's not discuss the elephant in the room.
No.
Wait,
Felt-
what? Why
felt
is that
both
elephant
of
in the
them.
room?
Never mind. Go on. You were
so,
saying?
so on 4th of July, was waiting to get into a lake reservoir. We were going on a boat with a couple of friends of mine, and was sitting in the parked car and waiting to get inspected for the jet skis, and it just shook. I mean, I didn't even realize. I thought like the handbrake had gone first, but then sure enough, that was an earthquake.
Was that your first earthquake?
No, I've had several of them here. That was probably that's the thing. It felt like the biggest one, which obviously they've said it was the biggest one, but it didn't.
For now.
Well, it just didn't feel that big. And
recent memory.
And then the day after was at a house and was literally just standing by a pool, and then some water sloshed out, and the ground shook, and then we're all fine. So I don't know. I expected it to be bigger.
Well,
what Keenan hears every night.
Let me tell you about the Northquake.
Oh, you just took a shot at you. You didn't even know. I expected it to be bigger. What Keenan hears every night.
Heart you, Keenan.
I love you too, Patrick.
No, but
totally
it's crazy.
All right.
It's crazy because we had a quake like damn.
It was 1992.
92?
No, it was 94.
94?
Yeah,
94.
I remember that because we saw
it was
Lion
like 25 years ago.
Yeah.
It was a 6 point.
No,
but the epicenter was here though.
The Northridge was not 6.
It was.
It wasn't in Ridgecrest by Las Vegas and shit. That's why what we felt was nothing compared to what people lost their homes out there, man.
Yeah, in Ridgecrest.
And the way it moved was different. The one we had here was a swaying back and forth like a boat. But the Northridge ones was the plates were moving up and down.
Oh,
so you got more of that shit.
Yeah. It was the planet ass ramming us.
For real.
No Vaseline.
But again, that quake happened in LA, in Northridge,
because there's a big fault line that goes in.
Yeah. But
I do not want to see something like that happen, because when these little ones hit, I realized I have zero plans for emergencies. I was kind of like, oh shit. So what do I do? It was like, Google, what's the best thing to do in an earthquake? And it was like, stay away from buildings, doorways, get under a table. I looked around, I was like, okay. And I was like, maybe I should just go to the beach. It's open space. They're like, do not go to the beach. There's tsunamis and hurricanes and whatever the fuck. And I was like, so basically we're fucked.
Have you heard of the Boxing Day tsunami, Philly? Like, what the hell, man?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, you just want to be out in the open area,
like an open field.
So now I have a first aid kit, by the way. I've got some canned foods, water, and shit.
There's a surplus place by my job. I went in there on Saturday morning because I needed to buy
guns.
I needed to buy some stuff, like because I was doing a fundraiser, so I needed to buy like socks and stuff to donate. But I've never seen this because I've gone there a couple of times, but it was packed.
Northridge or now? This was now.
No, I'm talking about a surplus store that was
this was
by my job.
Recent, right?
Yeah.
Oh, because
I just said it was on Saturday.
I wasn't paying attention.
He was doing like a fundraiser.
Okay, so we had a fundraiser this weekend for the LA Football Club, and I went to go buy socks because I was gonna donate socks. When I went to the surplus place, it was packed. I've never seen it this packed ever.
Yeah,
because I've gone there multiple times. Mm-hmm. And people were just like,
because they thought it
taking
was
all like the first aid kits, the emergency food kits, like,
right
all
after.
That
See, that's the thing. If it had been like as dangerous, it would have been too late.
I can't imagine. Well,
which is what I'm trying to say. Like, fuck.
But what you could do is, so if a big one really hit, first you have to get some sort of exchange of cash or something like that. Because if you have no money, I was thinking about this. I don't carry cash on me, so if I have a credit card. Possibly machines will be knocked out or power will be knocked out, so you can't go to an ATM, you can't go to a bank. So what you really want to do is have some sort of cash on you to exchange in case you needed something where stores might be open afterwards that you need to pay for stuff. Because you have to think electronic it could be cut out by power.
Anything connected to the grid is likely to have been damaged.
And we really just need water and canned food, ideally. Maybe some clothes and stuff like that. But you have to think about, showering because the water and power might be out. So you gotta have to find a place.
But even that, I think really it comes down to water and food. Like as uncomfortable as it is, we could get away with not showering.
Homeless
for a bit.
People do it all the time.
Right. Like
they're fine.
you know, we might smell a bit, but really at that point, like, is that the worst?
Yeah,
Like,
I
look
took
at
off
the-
my
your
shoes
priorities.
here in
Look at
podcast.
the Baroque period, you know, like they never
Baroque
showered.
period?
Yeah,
It was like a
like
once a
medieval
month
times.
kind of.
Is that what it's called? The Baroque period is
It could be called that.
well. What time period is Baroque
What would
period?
you call it,
1876 to
I want to
seven-
say maybe
The
around
period
that time.
when nobody shaved,
17. I don't-
nobody put on deodorant.
now. Is that a given factor? Certain like people in the upper ups like
I mean,
showered every
They,
so often.
they might have put on berries and
Whatnot,
oils and
yeah.
all kinds
yeah,
of
a
shit.
lot
but
of oils.
Yeah, yeah,
have
yeah.
you ever
That's what
tried
the
to do
Romans
that?
did.
Yeah.
The Romans
But see,
put
Roman
oil.
had
Yeah,
back.
17th and 18th century.
So okay, yeah, it's fine. Well, I just didn't know. I didn't know.
I'm pretty sure
You're
it
making
didn't
me
last
question
8
myself.
hours though. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, right.
you started off fresh in the morning, but without AC by the middle of the day.
Yeah,
Come
yeah.
high noon.
Yeah, they pretty much had to. They
We
had
need to
use
say
knives.
that more often.
Come high noon.
Yeah. Come high noon.
Come high noon. all the time.
That ain't come on, dude.
I was watching a comedian the other day who
My 3
said
favorite things.
who,
Come high
right,
noon.
right, who said we should refer to time rather than years as voyages around the sun. I was like, yes,
Jesus.
I love that.
I have served 30 voyages around the sun. In this
It has
life.
been many moons. Many moons ago, 30 moons ago.
Ah, geez.
Well, that
We
was-
should all speak Shakespeare.
that was the whole Sir John Dee thing, and the table that he had developed, which then penned the name Shakespeare, was the whole idea of being able to sort of, because of so many dialects were being spoken, he wanted to create like sort of the Elizabethan English, sort of unify the thought of a nation. You know, he was one of the first people. There's like documentaries showing that Sir John Dee is, what's the word I'm looking for? Supposedly he was the original 007 because he would sign his letters to the Queen that way. And so-
007?
yeah, it's actually where it comes from. And Sir John Dee looks more like Albus Dumbledore. So
Huh.
and he was really into like, as a scientist, nothing was off the table, from the metaphysical and all the new agey shit to the advances we have in science today.
You believe the world was flat?
He would inspect it.
Mm.
He wouldn't say wrong.
Okay.
You know?
Well, we've got to remember, I mean, with flat earthers, even the Greeks, which they point to,
Mhm.
they knew the world was round. So,
Pretty much. Yeah.
it gets, but again, that kind of speaks to our broader point of just like shouting logic or reason or facts can't always do it.
Mm.
And really, maybe it speaks to your point, Philly. Maybe there's something else behind that. Maybe it's not actually that they're flat earthers. Maybe there's some resistance to accepting that because they don't like authority, or maybe they don't like being made
Oh,
to
what we
feel
were discussing earlier
inferior.
before the podcast.
Right, exactly.
There's something there that you're upset at that doesn't really exist.
Exactly. And that maybe is where we should show some compassion, far from saying like accept that, your view is right,
Right, empathetic,
but at least show some empathy,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's true.
because it doesn't actually, that's the thing. Like, I'm very much thinking of where's like the outcome of a task. It doesn't do anything to just like shout at someone and you're wrong. It's like,
Yeah.
well, have you furthered the human consciousness? Have you made the world a better place as a result? No, you still have your view. They still have their view. So nothing has changed.
Yeah.
I have a
Oh.
question, right?
Go.
So in the US, a lot of things are classified, and probably across the world. However, there is a lot more footage from the outside of the US than in the US that tries to substantiate the claims that like extraterrestrials exist. As a kid, when you were living out there, did you ever see anything like crazy that you were like, well, that's fucking crazy? Might be aliens.
Did you get touched? You
No.
got abducted?
Fourth kind?
Yeah.
Yay or nay?
On it,
Well,
it was
do
yeah.
you believe in aliens?
Oh, first.
Oh,
yeah.
do I believe it?
yeah.
Yeah,
let's
okay,
start by
okay.
that.
All right,
You'd
all
be
right,
like,
all
well,
right.
fucking aliens are real.
Well, okay. I'll answer it like slightly equivocally,
okay.
in the sense that it is probably foolish of us to believe that there is no other forms of life,
Mm.
right?
Right.
Because the universe is infinite, and if the universe is infinite, that seems illogical for us to think that we are the only life forms.
Or the pinnacle of intelligent life.
Right, exactly. There could be a species that is like, 10, 100 times more, smarter than us. Having said that, given the very precarious nature of life, and, science has documented this, you need, X amount of water, you need fertile land, you need
supposedly.
Supposedly, but let's at least like take that as like somewhat of a given.
Yeah.
If we can take that as a given, then it's very unlikely that we'll ever interact with said life, because they're probably like so many light years away from us that we'll just never come in contact with them.
Yeah.
But having said that, there is these sort of moments where, I've been mainly in the countryside, which is why I tend to dismiss whether I've actually seen anything. You see this like shadowy figure, you go over and no one's there, and you're like, was that something? I don't know. I think basically the way we think about aliens, again, is more a projection of how we think.
Right.
And that's always going to be the case with anything we come up with, because we are subject to our own senses, right? And so when we conceptualize anything, it's from our own personal frame of reference rather than the intrinsic truth
like
of
personification
of its state.
Yeah,
Right.
it could be an interdimensional being that we have no understanding as far as like their physically, if they can even manifest
within our dimension.
within our dimension, within our like
Keenan has some interesting
our
thoughts
field
on
of
fourth
sight,
dimension
like-
type shit too.
something along those lines. Like maybe we can't even see them or
Yeah,
something.
we're subject
They
to
could be
like
right
the
here.
visual
Our
spectrum,
limitations,
right? And that's our
the
limit.
limitations of our visual
Well,
spectrum.
in the same way that a dog can hear, sounds far higher pitched than us. That's
Right.
a limitation of our, oral
Right.
hearing.
Yeah.
So,
Or the same way that I have the knack for, wooing anything in the planet that I comes into
yeah, well, we can't be as smooth a Casanova as you, Philly.
Hey, buddy, you forget who's here.
Oh, yeah, El Guapo. You think I'm
Hey,
bad?
baby.
Jeez.
No, I actually, I
watch your
remember I
mouth.
was talking with Keenan, let's see, a couple months back. We were.
I know
we
we
were
haven't
hanging-
spoken in a while.
Oh,
I'm
God.
sorry.
He's feeling.
I miss you.
He's feeling ignored, neglected. We got into some fourth dimension conversations, and Keenan was trying to
We
describe
did.
to me what it would be like to exist on that plane.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, and it didn't come. I mean, I picked it up from another astrophysicist, Neil deGrasse Tyson, when he was doing an interview with Joe Rogan. He did the best explanation of what the fourth dimension is like, or what it could be like.
Exactly.
In the sense that if you have an ant that can only see in two dimensions, that's on this table, this flat table here, it can see in front of it, back of it, left and right, and that's it. And you put a piece of paper down, and it'll see the piece of paper, and it can interact with it and all that stuff. It's in its own two-dimensional plane. And then we can put as many papers on it until we run out of room. Well, for us in the three-dimensional plane, we'll just put a piece of paper on top of another one. The ant, to the ant's perspective, only in a two-dimensional plane, that piece of paper will look like it just disappeared. But instead for us, it's like, no, we just stacked it on top, and we can go in an infinite amount, top and bottom, theoretically. But it just looks like one piece of paper to the ant. Now, for us in the three-dimensional plane, you do the same thing. We can stack as much as we want in this volume of this room till we fill it up. Then the person or whoever on the fourth dimensional plane will go, okay, well, we'll just stack up these three-dimensional objects on top of itself because they can see in the fourth dimensional plane. But to us, we go, what happened to it? It disappeared. We can't see it because we can't see beyond the third dimensional plane. So the best example that we can come up with in our own three-dimensional minds is the movie Monsters, Inc., where you had all these doors come out of this closet or whatever, and then you can open it up and it'll just walk in. It's a whole nother world. It's stacked within stacked.
Right.
Stacks on stacks and stacks, racks on racks.
Don't be a rapper, Keenan.
Whoop-de-whoop.
damn it, Pixar. You
know.
done it again.
Yeah. But they're not the only ones. You can pick well, Sliders is kind of another one.
Oh, that was
same
a dope
thing with
movie, yeah.
the
Sliders?
not
Jumper. I was thinking Jumper.
Jumper,
My bad.
Stargate, Jumper too, same thing. Anything where even Doctor Strange. But in Doctor Strange, you had a window that just turned a knob, and all of a sudden it went to something else. But as long as you can have a world within a world, that's pretty much it. And there's other geometrical, mathematical
like Inception,
looks
when
of it.
they turned the city on top of itself or whatever. Do you remember that shit?
Yeah.
Yes.
And they were like, "What? I've never seen anyone pick it up that fast."
But it's more not just that, but it's more of going within the dream and living in that dream world. That's kind of what it is. And then keep going down the rabbit hole of that.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah,
so there could be aliens in that dimension.
Exactly. So there could be
But we
something
just don't
we
sense them
see
because
it.
we're
Can't see
not.
That's what we get, those maybe sometimes those feelings where we get the things on our neck
Or ghosts.
or ghosts that feel through. It's like, no, it's probably just
The multiverse theory.
My cat once did that. So
walk through a time portal or
No.
okay.
I woke up one
Glitched.
night. I woke up one night and my cat was intensely staring at this like corner of the room and just wouldn't move, just like intensely staring. And I looked and it was like, Aurora, there's nothing there. And she just like, she did this like weird whimper of a meow as if she was speaking to something, but it wasn't to me. And I know when she's speaking to me because, you know, she nags me every morning, wakes me up at 5 a.m. or whatever hour. But no, it was literally like, well, it must have been 1 a.m., pitch black. And yet she was so intensely focused on this spot in the room and there was nothing there or nothing that I perceived.
Yeah, you can perceive.
Exactly.
Yeah, it gets really trippy. And then for some reason, I remember this because it tripped me out. But mathematically, you can go beyond fourth dimensions. As a matter of fact, you can go. So I think it's in the class we went up to 11 different dimensions.
Why can't you go past that?
Within
The world breaks.
Within the theory,
It'll
It'll implode in on itself.
For some reason, mathematically, I think the number they told us, from what I'm trying to remember, was like 25 different dimensions.
Okay.
But to go from 1 to 2 and then 2 to 3 is pretty incredible. Then 3 to 4 is just like mind blowing. Then it's like, well, what the fuck is 5, 6, 7, 8 all the way up to 25? It gets really weird. But that's when math, you know, you can't
Trying to live my life,
trying to
man.
live my life. You told me it's 25 dimensions. Yeah.
And that could potentially be where the multiverse also exists, is in the other dimensions, right? Like
And the
There are
style of
25 dimensions,
we're the
but
third
a bitch ain't
dimension
one.
in our own, but then they probably have in their own fourth dimension. There's probably a dimension in there.
there could be, you know, 5, 6, 7.
There's probably
all that
Keenan
stuff.
in there going through the struggle too, bro.
Uh,
Yo, kid, I got your
I
back,
want to be like
bro.
Jet Li in the movie The One and just go to all the different
Kill 'em.
universes and kill all of them so I can become greater.
What a concept, right?
But see, yeah.
Also, I mean, Jet Li is a fucking badass, and Jason Statham, oh man, he's an asshole, by the way.
What
But-
do you
in real life?
mean?
yeah, but
Jason
I guess
Statham?
it's true to his brand, right? What is he supposed to be, a friendly guy? I was I was the security guard at this I was a security guard who just stood in the elevator all day for the Soho House off Sunset.
Oh yeah.
Members only type shit. And I'm like, you know, this was like 10, 12 years ago. And he comes in and I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, Mr. Jason Statham? And he was like, yeah. Like almost like, yeah, what
What
the
about
fuck's
it?
the point? Like, what do you like?
What do you want?
And I was just like, wow. Like the tone was just clearly leave me alone. And so I was like, well,
Soho
Should've
House
did a
is
high
an
kick.
interesting place.
have you been in? I
Yeah.
haven't been in because you have to be invited, you know?
Yeah. So
Ooh, Patrick. All right.
so first time.
Damn.
Keenan is now locked onto you.
Okay. So first time I got invited, and there is a lesson in this. The lesson is just always say yes to things. You know, you'll never know where it ends up, and it'll probably make a good story.
Yeah.
So I went to this alumni event for my university here in North America, because it was a pretty big college where I went to, like 65,000 students. So pretty much there's
Weird flex, but okay.
no, but there's no, but what that means is there's like alumni networks all across the
Right.
world, basically. So I went to this event, spoke with this person who was a producer. She actually got me onto this like web series as a production assistant for, you know, a couple of days. And that's where I really saw the side of entertainment of, oh, so talent can be very high strung and everyone else just has to, you know,
Deal with it.
bow like servants
Wow.
to royalty.
What was the website? Just the name. You don't have to go into
What
detail
was
with
it?
it.
I think it was like something like Friends Without Benefits or
Okay.
something like that.
whatever.
Friends from college, huh?
It's something.
That's
Something.
fine.
It was
as long as it wasn't web series that I was like a big fan of, because I'd be like, awesome.
Oh no.
disappointed.
It was some random
Okay.
small timey thing.
Okay.
anyway, that producer friend, she took me to Soho House, invited me one night, and
Mm.
went up, and just the air of it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, most people there are just like industry folk you wouldn't actually recognize. But you know, every so
That's
often you got
okay.
the A-lister.
Okay.
Like I went to the bar, and Leonardo DiCaprio was next to me. I just said like, "Hey mate, what's up?" with, you know,
Yeah.
an even thicker accent than that, because this was the first time I was in LA, so I always like to impress by throwing it on a little thicker.
He flexes.
I flexes with the accent,
Yeah.
and he just literally went, "Oh, you're Australian? That's so cool." So that was pretty.
And
that was
Patrick blushed a
Oh
little
no,
bit.
no! I like was very cool about it, but inside I'm like, "Oh,
You're
this
like,
is the coolest
yeah.
thing."
He's the coolest motherfucker alive. You're like, okay.
But then I went over with my producer friend, and this is where I saw the slightly uglier side of LA. She was speaking with this client of hers who was like a former Miss Britain or something like that, and they were trying to get her on some kind of reality TV series, you know, the lives of the rich and the famous, or
Right.
something like that. And this guy comes over, and yeah, he's a nice enough guy. He's just like chatting about, you know, his business and what he does, and he's being all respectful. And this girl looks at me and is like in front of this guy and just like rolling her eyes and like, "Oh, get a load of
producer
this guy."
friend?
No, not my producer friend.
Oh,
This
the
Miss
whatever.
Miss
Whatever.
Britain is like rolling her eyes and like, "This, you know, this guy, get a load of him." And like he walks off, sort of tail between his legs. He wasn't like hitting on her or anything. He was just like trying to make conversation. And she's just like,
She
all,
straight up
like,
B word.
yeah, she
Heavy on the
was.
B.
And this is just, it's very sad to see that there are, I mean, this is a segment of LA that
Mhm.
that likes to act like, you know, they're so, you know, top shit.
Trust
and
me, I
what
know,
what
yeah.
I what I
Two of
don't
my co-hosts are like that every fucking.
But what I
episode.
Who the
don't
fuck said that?
like what I don't
know.
like about it is one thing very specifically is it's sad to see people acting like, you know, oh, this status or this, you know, thing matters, because at the end of the day, like, we're all just trying to like make a decent life for ourselves, whatever
Mm.
that is. I always say, like, you know, success is not, you know, it's not trappings of being rich, it's not materialism, it's just whatever you want it to be. And as
Right.
long as you've got enough self-awareness to define that for yourself, then that's all that really should matter. And, you know, we're all going to end up the same. Can we not just be somewhat nice
6
to
feet
each
under,
other
yeah.
until
But how do you get through people's heads like that? I mean, shoot, we had this lady on our way to the anime expo cut us off in her bicycle as we're driving in a car. Like, she could have lost her life, or we could have been, like, the carelessness of other people. I mean, is that something embedded in us since the moment we were here? Like, how you can't get rid of that.
But you can if you're conscious, and that
Mm.
really comes back to
Yeah, I mean, that's a choice.
it's a
develop.
choice. And that's the thing. I think too many people, and I've been guilty of this, not spending enough time on self-awareness and self-reflection in this sort of relentless pursuit of, you know, I've just got to hustle for the next thing, hustle for the next job, hustle for the next paycheck, whatever
You said
it
it,
is.
brother. I know.
But at the same time, you need to take that time to do that and develop that sense of self. Because as soon as you do that, you will be so much clearer in what you have to do for the world, and you will make a much better impact on the world rather than a careless impact. Because that's
Mm.
the thing, is that whether it's careless physically or whether it's careless emotionally, people who do that are not thinking of the repercussions of what their actions are having on others, and therefore how this world operates. I mean, we can all sit around and blame someone else for the world's woes, or we can take some personal responsibility and realize that, well, unless we're going to be the ones to start some change, then it won't change.
Mhm.
You wanna be starting
That's,
something.
that's how I live my life,
Starting
guys.
something.
I'm not gonna make the change, so I'm just gonna chill.
Hey, so one of the, and to speak on that very note, it sounds super cliche, but I don't really do the bushwalks, the hikes. I tried a while ago, but it was mostly because I was like interested in whoever I was talking to at the time, and that's what they wanted to do. I was like, sure, I'll go on that. But I really personally like to go to the beach, like at night, when there's moonlight, I went the other day and it was pitch black. I was like, "Fuck, this is scary."
Was it creepy? It's
yeah,
pretty
yeah,
creepy.
yeah. No,
yeah.
but when there's moonlight, it's nice to be on the beach at night and just chill, hear the waves, and like really close out. And I find that I don't do that enough. And I feel that when I'm so close to society, it's hard to get a good picture of society. And I think it ties back to the ability to be grateful for things and this and that. The minute you can remove yourself from an environment, you can suddenly review it for what it is. For example, like when I left LA to go to New York for the first time, and then I came back to LA, I was like, oh shit, this is what LA is. Because my whole life I had just known LA, right? And to have lived in a different city and not touched LA for a while, to come back, I was like, oh man. And then I went back to New York after that, and I was like, oh, and this is New York. And then just even having a brief visit in Texas, and it's not like I've had extensive travel, but just going to Texas, and I was like, shit, LA really is some of the best fucking weather out here. Like it's
nice
uncomfortable
today.
pretty much
Nice day.
everywhere else at some point in the year.
But
And-
no, but you speak very well to that idea of travel, but not just travel for vacation purposes or travel for, you know, R&R, which is all important, don't get me wrong. But again, travel consciously, travel to really experience a place. It's why I've always liked living longer term in a place. It's why I lived in Vietnam for 2 months. You know, I did.
That must have been sad.
That was an incredible experience. But just, again, get you out of that comfort zone and get you experiencing a different place. And that's the same thing coming here. I mean, as much as America and Australia have a lot of commonalities, there's a lot of differences. And you really see that when, you know, making this leap literally across an ocean to
Right.
live here permanently and actually craft a life here. And that's the thing I've always found is that as much as, you know, I embrace a lot of American values. I mean, I wouldn't be here if I didn't. I still have very much, you know, and I know it's a privileged immigrant experience, but it is still nevertheless an immigrant experience of seeing things not quite from that same
Yeah.
American lens. These things that, you know, everyone else takes certain for granted. And I'm like, well, I have a slightly different perspective on that. So I think the classic example that I use coming back to stress, people always ask, well, you're so like calm and you're not like worried about work. And they ask, why is that? It's like, well, because I've had about 16 jobs in the last 10 years. So even if the worst thing happens, I get fired, I'll find another job. And then the other thing is that your boss actually doesn't need to be that scary. And if you can really like stand firm in your convictions, whoever that boss is, whether it's an actual boss in a corporate environment, whether it's a client, but if you can stand firm in your convictions, ironically enough, you'll earn more respect from them and put yourself at less risk of ever like losing that job, losing that client, whatever that
Does
is.
that work, Joe?
You goddamn right. There,
And do you think
Goddamn
it has
right.
something to do with like sort of people usually feed into certain fears and things like that. So if somebody sees that they can get that out of you somehow for some reason it sort of manifests and they'll treat you that way. Whereas if it seems that you're more confident in yourself and take the example of, let's say, dating, right? Where if someone comes off like sort of hi and this and that, generally speaking, people are like, I don't want that kind of person around me. But if somebody comes off stable, sure in themselves, and oh yeah, sure, I got that for you, boss, and all that. So yeah, that's the kind of person I want around me. Someone who isn't fidgeting and fearful and worrying, and because that is a stand-up person, and I can use more of that.
Well,
around
because it ties back to that self-awareness. When you know yourself so completely, and I realize that it's an ongoing process. We're always learning more about ourselves and how we operate in this world. But at the same time, if you can be at least confident in what you're putting out to the world, then you will inevitably attract that from other people around you, whether it's dating, whether it's, you know, in employment, whatever that facet of your life is. There's never a time not to be confident in yourself. And I say this with very strong conviction because everyone has a unique perspective. That may sound cliche, but what that affords you is a unique way of looking at the world and therefore a unique way of bringing value to other people's lives in this world. So all you need to do, all you need to do, right? The quintessential question.
This is it.
But all you have to do is unlock what that is for yourself, display that to the world, and then the world will in turn give you what you need, right? And this comes back to an abundance versus scarcity mindset. In fact, Billy, we were talking about this earlier before,
again.
of that if you are able to be fearless, courageous, confident in what you're putting out to the world, then you don't need to be worrying, oh, where's the next paycheck coming from?
Right.
Am I ever going to find love? These sort of questions. It will happen because you're putting out that energy for others to reciprocate that
Not
energy.
instantaneously though. It does take time. So
Well,
yeah,
that comes into putting
I
in
was
the
going to
work.
say, Patrick, you basically just described me. I walk around exuding
No,
confidence.
but that's the
Yeah.
thing. It's not instantaneous.
No,
it never
it's-
is.
yeah,
But you have to. You still have to put in the work. You can't just oh, I just wish for it to happen and it will
But
happen
most
to me.
people, when they hear this, they'll be like, "Oh, if that's all I got to do, I'm going to do it." And then a week later, it's like, "What's going on? Why is it not working?"
this working?
But it's
Right.
like I think one thing that needs to be added to a lot of conversation that has that topic in it is that the signs of time, and that it may be months or even years that people can't expect that sort of change.
Absolutely.
Has to continuously going. So even after a week or two, you have to keep going for like months.
Oh, not even years.
Yeah.
Like I'll say this from direct personal experience. Like I would feel like I'm only just, is that word? Just. But no, just in the sense of
Yeah,
time.
you're using it in different contexts.
Yeah, different
Mm,
context.
yes,
Context
yes.
is important.
Yes.
Yes, that's all key.
But I've only just reached at least a level where things are starting to be aligned.
Mhm.
Right.
After 6-7 years, something like
It's
that.
about, I would say after 6-7 years of
Mhm.
actually putting in the work.
Most people don't hear that. They would hear it and go, they would go back. Like 6-7 years is too, the idea is that there definitely needs to be an input of understanding of concept of time within this sort of methodology of thinking.
Because
Right.
we're
I
all
think
in
it's left out.
we're all in our own races, and we're all in our own races to better ourselves. So
Mhm.
if people want the thing to measure themselves against when they get worried about the time passing, which is understandable, then just look at, are you 1% better than you were yesterday? Do something small, because those little 1%s
Yeah,
add up to a massive
Over
amount.
a
we
100
talked about
days,
my
turns into
student loans.
100%.
Yeah.
podcast.
And you could never you could never take this approach to cut the time in half, right? So you can't impregnate 9 women to get a baby in 1 month.
Right.
Right. And yet that is the approach that most people
That's it,
take
yeah,
to
yeah.
all of their efforts.
Mhm.
Everything has its fermentation period. It's
I mean, I'm allow me to like flex a little here. But if you
Oh,
had
you haven't been
doing
doing
it.
that?
You've
Yeah.
been doing it all
Like,
episodes.
now
No,
you
no.
wanna do it?
Right. No, but
Okay.
if you'd asked
this isn't even your final form.
Now,
if you'd asked Patrick at like 18, 19, 20,
third person. Okay, here we go.
no, right. If you'd asked him whether he was going to be living in America, working in America, making 6 figures before 30,
Mhm.
if you'd asked him whether he was going to be featured in Forbes, if he was going to be like co-hosting events as like a pillar of the LinkedIn community, like he would have told you, mate, get
Fuck
fucked.
off."
Like that's not going to happen. And yet somehow it
Yeah.
has. But again, that's the point. Sometimes you just have to, as we said earlier, trust the process. It can be very hard to do, but if you're just grateful that you're part of this process and you're putting in the work that in your soul
Mm.
is right for you, then the results will come. They will take care of themselves in time.
Mhm.
And you just know, okay, well, this is what I have to do. This is what it is right for me to be doing in this point in time.
In that transition, did something happen to you? Because if you didn't think that before and now you do, was there some person, someone, something, some involvement, did anything outside the realm of Patrick happen to make that change?
I think it's a couple of things. It's an exposure to good role models that push you forward. So there were people in my life, friends who were going on exchange, and that motivated me to apply for exchange. And then I did that and I had a good experience there. So, that sort of reinforced itself.
Mhm.
And then the other flip side is what I like to call the negative motivation, which can sometimes surprisingly be just as powerful, where people tell you can't do things. And if you can find that stubbornness in yourself, we all have it. That's the thing. Even people who say they're not stubborn people can get a little rubbed the wrong way if they get told they can't do something. So go out there, put the work in, and prove them wrong.
Yep.
And so I think while there is elements of those external factors into how I, sort of achieve what I did, I still put number one credit to giving myself more time to self-reflect and develop my own self-awareness more and more. And I think one sort of really critical way I do it, and I know people will find different ways. Some people find meditation works. I've honestly never found meditation works particularly well for me. Some people find affirmations work. I never found affirmations work for me. The thing that I found work was late night strolls in a park next to Santa Monica Airport.
Isn't that kind of like meditation?
It's kind of like meditation, but it's still, I guess maybe it's not meditation in the classical sense of
it's in the Buddhist sense.
Yeah.
I find racking up a couple of lines, tossing up a little bit of tequila.
But that's the point. Find the thing that works for you.
Keenan finds himself in himself.
Yeah.
So like trekking along like Bundy.
Joe's gonna rob you. He knows where you're at.
But there's something very therapeutic. And it's not even.
Well, for me, it was taking a walk through Manhattan for no fucking reason.
There you go.
Those planes, the planes landing, taking off.
Oh, I love planes. I love planes.
Okay.
I'm still the little kid who gets I don't turn on my electronics until we're actually cruising altitude. So I'm like, oh my God, guys, we're going to take off.
I'm on the plane like, oh, this motherfucker sounds taking off. No.
Wait, so do you sit aisle? Do you sit next to the plane wing? Do you in the back, the front? Like
I'm always aisle, and that's just strategic because I'll drink a hefty amount of water.
I'm the same.
And it's
water,
always
water. Okay,
no, I drink
water.
Yeah.
And then it's always back of the plane because I'm like a real budget hunter, and so I always get it's usually from a dodgy ass site. People will say, "Oh, is it like cheapo air?" It's like cheapo air.
You said Qantas, that's right?
No, but
that's for Australia.
That was I found it on Momondo, which is a great site for flight comparisons, and then it was flycheapfree.com or something like that. It was the dodgy ass site, but it was still a cheap fare.
You said it's called Momondo?
Yeah, Momondo. It's literally a lifesaver and it saves you so much on flights.
I was gonna say, if it's Mamando, that means to suck in Spanish.
Yeah, it's a Spanish slang term for sucking cock.
I found it on Mamando.
I found it while Mamando. No, that's cool. Honestly,
that's good info.
I've wanted to. For example, I've never even been to San Francisco, and it's in my backyard.
We're trying to get him to go to San Francisco.
I need to do this more. I told myself
$7 Flixbus.
Yeah, or you drive there. I mean, we have cars. I've driven there.
No, but literally, he'll pay less for the bus than he will for fuel.
That's crazy.
I'm a big believer in bus. I once took a bus from Saigon in Vietnam to Siem Reap in Cambodia, 18-hour bus trip. And I did that because the bus was $5 and the plane flight was $18.
Oh shit!
This was my college days. I was really saving the
anything like that here.
Fuck that. I'm the guy that's gonna hop on business so I can be in San Francisco in an hour. Fuck that.
I'm willing to drive. I've done it so many times. I can now because it was difficult to drive 6.5 or longer hours to go to LA to San Francisco. Now I can do it in one run, no problem.
Yeah.
Dude, I have a job.
I can't sit in a car that long, man. I just can't.
I have a job next month for Pebble Beach, which is 6 hours away.
Yeah.
And I'm dreading it because we drive for that job.
Yeah.
Because we have to take a bunch of stuff, and I just hate it.
You sing songs.
Throw on a couple of podcasts, dude.
No. I know that. Yeah. It's just the time.
Nah, get a karaoke sing along.
The time that I have to spend in a vehicle for that when I can do so many other things. Yeah. It's just
it wouldn't be so bad if it was a standing situation.
You need a heavy distraction.
Why is it that cars are all sitting down? Isn't there a way we could develop a car where you can drive it while you're standing? There's got to
Standing
be.
desk car.
Yeah.
A standing desk.
No,
car?
seriously though. Think about like
Maybe the way the humans like the way
maybe it's the bleeper bleep the way the humans.
Damn it! Why are you my friends? I hate this. Anyway, I just
You
don't
meant the
think-
human body, like how it's
He had a slip.
the way
We caught you.
Oh god. The way we're meant to operate machinery in momentum is probably a lot easier on the body as we're sitting down rather than standing up. Like for mind and hand control and eye coordination and stuff like that. I don't know. That's probably one. I'm pretty sure we've developed this over many a times as to sitting down is the best option as far as getting to point A to point B the easiest as a human.
I just feel like it would just be so sick, especially for like long travel. You know what I mean?
Because I don't want to stand. You stand in hours at theme parks for like 2-3 hours.
No, but what I mean is like you can pull over, let somebody else drive, walk around, like exist while you're driving. You know, sort of a group bus kind of situation. Even buses, they don't let you like stand. I get it because they're carrying lots of people. But if it's like a private situation,
there's private buses where you can stand. I mean, they have like stripper poles in the middle and all that stuff. But
like my grandpa was
kind
a
of
truck
bus.
driver, and I was in a semi truck cabin, I guess is what it was called. We had like the bunk beds, or whatever, but it was tall enough that I could stand as a kid. So the AC was super cool. It was not a problem at all traveling across.
You know, all you needed a video game system in there.
Yeah.
All I had was a CD player.
Oh, yeah, that
I
would
had a
pass fine.
Slipknot CD,
oh,
and then
geez.
I remember listening to it and being like where I was mouthing the words,
Yeah.
and my grandpa taps me on my left shoulder, and he's
Shut
like, he's like, mijo, right? And he didn't
Yeah.
speak Spanish. He was like, mijo, you know what you look like when you do that? I was like, what? Like a dog who bit his balls and can't yelp. And I was like, fuck.
Oh, God dang.
That's the
Wow,
kind of
some
guy.
shade.
Yeah. My grandpa was a pretty fucking crazy.
It's the same
guy,
thing for
man.
taking like 12-hour plane flights or something like that or longer.
Yeah,
Dude.
15 was what
the
I
flight
just
from New
did.
York
too.
to LA. I'm like, fuck, 6 hours. I'm like,
Mhm.
my legs and shit.
Yeah.
Unless you're going first class, I guess it's not a problem.
But see, if you're at home,
Even then, sometimes.
even
yeah.
if you're at home and you're on a couch or something like that, you're sitting. If you're almost like me and Joe, we can sit on a couch and play a video game for like 8 hours straight, no problem.
Straight up.
I fucking watched all of Stranger Things, which is 8 episodes in like one day from like sunrise to sunset
Speaking
with
of that,
barely like,
Yeah, but
getting
you
up.
can also stretch your legs in front, and that's the key difference
For the most
a
part,
flight.
sometimes I sit like this, as I'm
Yeah.
watching, because I'm so intent on the show or the video game. Well, I'm not
because
perfectly.
Keenan
my
is
goodness, what
proper
is
at all
happening? I
times.
He puts his
Sit to
hands on his
attention.
laps. Hands on his laps. Very.
Is this how the humans sit near to me?
I hate
Turn
What
on.
am I
it, you
doing
all.
as
You
human
all
is
suck
podcasting.
these fat nuts, all of you.
I must put my personality implant on.
Snarple.
Hello,
fucking
viewers.
hate that.
How are you today? Are you enjoying the TV?
Don't join in on the Patrick.
Please allow me to have 55 words with you.
Not a word more, not a word less.
Kid is like, fuck you guys. I hate all of you.
How is the weather? Yes, indeed, it is fine.
All right,
That's
Cincuenta.
that's
Oh,
my
man.
safe word.
I'm glad you brought up Stranger Things.
Yes, do you watch?
What is,
I haven't
does
watched the
Patrick-
latest season.
But you've seen the other two?
Yeah, I've seen the
Oh,
other
okay.
two.
How about you, Phil? You haven't seen any of it?
Just like Game of Thrones, I've seen maybe 3 episodes.
the Roans.
Hey, he's too busy hustling out here.
Yeah,
he ain't got
yeah.
time to be a
I do it
consumer.
better
He's a
than
creator.
that.
No, honestly, I don't watch TV because I know it's good.
I have the.
That's
I'm
the
And
the
it's my
opposite.
own stuff.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I wish.
I'm the opposite. I'm a fucking avid consumer. I love it.
Because if
love
I get hooked on something, forget about it. I know my personality. I have 0 discipline, which is why I have discipline.
Oh, like the other night when you came over. When was it? Like 2 weeks
The other
ago.
night.
It was like 2 weeks ago. He came over. I put him on an anime that I liked, and it was already like midnight when we put it on.
Oh,
And we were
sunrise.
like, another episode. He's like, another
It was like
episode,
6
another
like 6 a.m.,
episode,
7
another
a.m. by the
episode.
time.
Mhm.
And we needed to do something the following morning, and we
Oh,
just like,
yeah,
goddamn.
that's right. Fuck,
we
that
were
was
like,
terrible.
all right, are we gonna keep this going all night or not? He's like, fuck it, let's do it.
And Joe's like, I do this all the time.
do this all the
Do you watch Japanese anime or any other forms of anime type style?
Have you
No?
ever seen any?
I have,
No,
but
okay.
certainly PG stuff.
Yeah,
PG
yeah,
style,
yeah.
yeah.
So like,
No, the
Japanese
only-
shit.
We could put you on some good shit, man. Like on the same level.
That
as
is,
like Game
it's
of
not,
Thrones.
it's not
fucking-
hentai. There's no tentacles in people's mouths or anything like that.
Now, the only other Japanese stuff I watch is Terrace House, because I'm a big lover of psychology,
Okay.
and it kind of underpins my marketing background because it's like
Mm.
how people think, why they think the way they
Terrace
do.
House.
Terrace House. So it's basically, how would I describe it? It's
Is it a soap?
it's reality TV. It's like
Yeah. It's like
the-
Big Brother.
no, it's like The Bachelor, but very Japanese in the sense that they don't like ply them with drinks. They don't, I've known some people who work on The Bachelor and they say, yeah, we ply them with drinks. we try
they
and get
them all.
to get them to loosen up
Scratch
and all
it.
that. But no, it's literally just a fly on the wall camera, and they'll go on little dates, and it's
Mhm.
really cute. And they, maybe they'll hold hands, and that's like a big deal in the show.
Yeah, dude. I've seen documentaries about like the levels of intimacy in Japan, and like even just kissing on the cheek is like a big.
No, exactly.
fucking
But
deal.
it's just really nice to see this like very human interactions, and it's a real sort of, I mean, obviously it is still somewhat staged,
Oh, okay, yeah.
but it's probably the closest to what we see like real human interaction. I remember one season I watched, the big drama of it was when this guy got given this very expensive like Wagyu meat from his client, and all the housemates ate it, and he was just like,
Oh,
really
yeah.
sour about it for the next 6 episodes. And we sort of like slowly saw him come to terms with this, really sulk about it, but then slowly forgive the housemates for doing that.
Tina would
Wow.
have never forgiven them.
Nope, I would have jizzed in all their like clothes or like their bed sheets or something like that.
I would have disowned all you motherfuckers.
You would have hit the toothbrushes, huh?
that's what about there's a TV show I think it's in London where it's
Is
all,
it because he's European, Keenan?
no, because he mentioned about the
European
TV
ancestry.
Yeah. No, but you mentioned about the show that almost like close to real life and they fall around, but it's somewhat scripted. There's another show where it's not scripted at all. It's literally just the camera in these people's homes, and they're watching television, and you're watching them watch television.
yeah,
and they just
yeah.
talk about
Is that a
Something.
thing?
It's
That's a
called
thing?
something TV or something like
Yeah.
that. And
there's
it's just regular
it's just
people
regular-
watching
it's
a show or
something
an event
something
or
box
something.
TV. I
Yeah.
think it is.
TV or
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
like that.
No, I have seen a few episodes of that.
Yeah.
That's really hilarious. Where it's
They literally just watch TV and give their opinion.
and we watch
Yeah.
them watch TV.
It's like that kid.
it's very meta.
Inception.
So I don't know if you guys ever fucked around with the social network YouNow.
No.
Negative.
So it's one of the first live streaming social networks. I used to fuck around with it just because I took Gary Vee's advice and looked at all these other adjacent social networks that most people aren't on. And YouNow, there was a guy who literally became world famous for, he just threw on his camera and slept for like a month straight.
Wait, what are you supposed to do with this? You're just supposed to watch people?
Like
They
every
just go
night he would
live.
just sleep.
And yeah, and he had like a sick following because they were
Wait,
like,
wait.
fuck, he's still asleep.
But how do you physically do that?
I know.
He got up maybe to use the bathroom a couple of times, but other than
But
that,
to eat,
So
no,
that's
just
all he does?
Fucking like just
He just sleeps.
sleeping.
There's no edits or cuts because there would be.
No, 'cause
I don't
it's
know. I don't
live.
know the story well
okay.
enough. I just know that that's what happened. And then there was another guy who he inherited his dad's liquor store, and he was worried about how he was going to promote and market it. And this was like in the hood, in the hood.
Oh.
But because there's so many interesting stories, he just threw on YouNow and going live. And actually, we should consider doing that shit for this pod, by the way. And it's still a
People
fledgling.
just watch it?
Yeah, weird people. The Midwest is on these platforms, putting it to you like that. Like
Yeah.
Oh, really? In
yeah,
the
yeah,
United States?
yeah. The
Oh,
South and the Midwest
Oh.
use these platforms more than Instagram and everything else.
Just to promote their stuff?
No, just to be on there. That
Oh.
is where they consume content.
And you speak to something that I think is really powerful, that so much of social media gets a lot of flack. It's been well documented. And like, sure, I get it.
Mhm.
Trolling, fake news,
Yeah.
all of these different aspects. But what people forget is it gives all of us, it really democratizes the ability to create content, create stories, and therefore create connection. And that's the thing that I really like about it. So I think you make a good point there about you now, is that you're giving a platform to people who perhaps didn't have a platform or
Yeah, I
felt the other social networks didn't align with them. And that, I think, is something that really should be celebrated, while we can still hope that we can make these social platforms work in a way that serves humanity as opposed to hinders humanity is certainly a noble aim. But at the same time, we should celebrate what has been good about social networks coming to the forefront.
You'd be surprised. I mean, there was another one called Friend Life, that I got gotten invited to, and to this day, those people still follow me on Instagram afterwards. But I would jump on there, and I think I made $3 as a whole for going live. I think maybe a week. I went live straight for a week, 1 hour at a time, and I made like $3. But the thing is, they paid directly. Eventually, Friend Life turned into what's now known as Live.me.
Right.
But there are people out there who refuse to be on the mainstream because it's generally perceived as like, well, what's the point? No one's going to look at me on there. You know what I mean? And yeah, most of these live streaming platforms are populated by I guess the word would be cam models or whatever. And they're not cam models. They're just girls in their own town who don't have any other platforms and don't want to be on Pornhub or Xvideo or whatever. And it's not like they're doing anything. They're literally just girls wearing a little less than usual, but nothing where it'd be like considered porn, and just having a bunch of weird guys. Just it's all the people,
weird ass fetish,
all the people who don't feel comfortable being seen anywhere else for some reason flock here and to these types of social media live sites. And there's musicians that have a niche following. I mean,
and it's not even just that. I mean, even if we go back to the original purpose of social media is to create connections between people. I mean, hell, that's how we know each other. Yeah. Literally, I went through. That's right. So I went to a connection of mine, Joe Applebaum. I think I'm pronouncing that right.
Applebaum,
I hope. Yeah. He had a LinkedIn local event here in Los Angeles, and I only knew him through LinkedIn and through commenting on his content. We had a few calls and whatnot.
Crazy guy.
Very crazy guy. Went to this event, met Philly and Keenan. Like that was
you met us both in the first year?
That's how we met.
Shit.
So I mean, if that's not a testament to the power of social media, it can bridge that initial gap. And then once you bridge that initial gap, then you get, the wonderful in person, which
and meeting in IRL, what it does after the fact is incredible.
IRL?
Yeah, in real life.
In real life.
I thought you were a nerd, Keenan. What is this?
You're really disappointing us here.
I can't tell you how many lady friends I've met on social media.
IRL. ASL. Did you ever hit the ASL?
Yeah, I knew
ASL.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Keenan.
So Keenan is simultaneously 15 and 55 at the same time.
What is ASL?
God,
you kids and your interwebs.
I still use
He's like,
email.
Keenan,
he's like, I don't know what IRL means because I'm having real life interactions.
But without getting too far away from the point, I do think, okay, so there was a point in time right before I left New York the second time. I ran into these. So I have a buddy out in New York. His name is Curtis, and his thing is one beer bounce. Every time he comes over, we're sure to spend at least $100, right? Because it's Manhattan. But we go to just pub after pub, bar after bar, one beer and bounce, and we see if we make friends. We met a lot of people in New York that way because that's how people in New York meet. And one person in particular that we met happened to be in town for a convention on raising awareness of like suicide or what have you, right? But also he was on an ambassador trip personally to invite anyone who would be willing from a major metropolitan city, whether it's Los Angeles or New York or whatever, he would pay for their flight and their lodging to go down to the South, one of those places, to sort of help share the cultural knowledge that isn't readily available to those areas that they only have access to via social media.
Why would we taint them like that?
But that speaks to a broader
and he was
point
like,
of-
dude, I will pay. He was like, please, they would love you, but more than that, you'd be doing us all such a big favor by coming out, man. And I was like, I was sincerely considering it, man, for a long time, for a long time. Except, it would have happened if it wasn't for later that night as we were all walking around. He starts asking random people, "Do you have weed? Do you have weed?" And I was like, and it's New York, it's really illegal, you know. And he started asking some really dodgy people, and I was like, fuck.
Damn.
And sure enough, you know, I don't want this guy who doesn't know what he's getting into. It started looking pretty fishy. Probably we're gonna get into a fight or get robbed. And then that's when my buddy was like, he works for TSA and shit. He was like, Phil, let me tell you something, man. I can tell you right away when it's better to leave people to their own consequences. He was like, you should have just left, man. You should have just left with me. It's like, don't do that again. And I was like, shit. And I would have taken him up on that if I hadn't seen that part of his character. Then again, we were kind of drunk, but still.
But that's the point, is that sometimes you need to make those judgment calls, and that's about putting yourself first, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's not being selfish to put yourself first. It's if you aren't putting yourself first and therefore being the best version of yourself, then how can you be the best version of yourself for others?
That's true.
Right.
Yeah, that guy clearly.
Self-awareness is important.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, there's nothing wrong with, you know, asking people for cocaine too, but he clearly wasn't from
He was
the
asking
city.
for weed and cocaine.
Oh yeah. First, when they said they had weed, he was like, cool. He was like, well, do you have cocaine?
Yeah.
And that's when I was like,
Cocaine?
fuck. And you know, my buddy works for TSA. That's when he was like, I'm fucking out.
Yeah. Damn. But
He was like, I can't.
He's not about that.
Yeah.
I can't, in good conscience, be here. Phil, I do take polygraph tests every once in a while.
God.
I gotta go, guy.
I have a mate who works for the Australian Taxation Office, and when we talk about the ways we've, you know, maybe flouted the regulations in the past, he's like, la 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 la, I'm not listening.
It's like you have that one friend and you're about to do illicit stuff. Philly's that guy. He's like, all right, well, guys.
Well, pip pip cheerio, I'm off to bed.
I used to be that guy. Now Joe has converted me over. I'm grown.
to the
It
dark
takes some
side.
personal responsibility, man.
No, this is all Joe's fault, and he'll admit
I'm
to
the
it.
savage. I'm the
If Joe can corrupt you, he will gladly.
fucking go. Shout out to Creeps. What's up?
But it took him like 10 years, so.
To get to where I am?
No,
to
to get
crack
me,
Keenan.
to crack
Oh,
He wasn't
it
even
took
trying,
longer
Keenan.
than
me.
that.
It's longer than 10 years. Yeah.
We've known each other for 20,
Almost 25
I
or
was like,
22.
listen, you can corrupt me right now if you want. Let's go.
Art did it though. He has 1 foot in and 1 foot out.
Yeah,
At all times, he's
testing
like,
the
At this
waters.
point, Keenan is flirting with drugs.
Hey, wait, we can't just put that on the podcast. Like, people listen to
What are you
this.
talking about? You bought a pipe and showed it to all of us last week.
I showed it to
Marijuana
you
is
too.
totally
That's
legal.
totally different.
There was a video clip that
Hey,
went out.
I didn't approve of that.
Get the
That was
fuck
not
outta
consensual.
here.
Wow.
I not consent to
Goddamn
that.
right.
Are you really
You just
a
me
host
too.
of this podcast? It's literally called the None of Our Business podcast, where we discuss things we have 0.00% business discussing it all. There's no authority
say
behind
that.
what we do.
But I know you two hold out every single fucking episode.
As far as what?
And I could see it in your
Shut
eyes.
Hold
ass
out.
up.
Yes.
I mean, everybody knows I'm more of
Uh-huh.
a bookworm in general, but also, I mean, everything I talk about, I have no professional basis to speak on. You know, and anytime I talk politics,
Yeah, but you don't need a professional basis to speak on it.
That's why it's
and that
Check
and
and
that
behave.
comes back to just being willing to learn, right? And we talked about this before, Billy, that you and I suffer from the classic intellectual trap where we have the awareness of what we don't know, and that maybe hinders us from pursuing, you know, a type of business because we feel like we have no business being in that line of work or that field. But yet, you know, I see time and time again there are people who are less qualified than us making it work because they don't
I
have
see that all the time.
but they don't have all the answers, but they figure it out.
Yeah.
And so maybe we need to adopt some of that mentality. That's
I've
just
spoken on that so much,
right.
man.
That courage of just, you know what, hell with it. Let
And
me
sometimes it's not even courage; they're just ignorant to their chances. So they do it, and
they
then
do it.
since we think we know our chances.
Yeah. So maybe we need to.
You're a little more
Take that.
self-conscious. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like think about the guy who gets the girl who like, really? Yeah, you're like, yeah. Well, he doesn't know any better. He's like, fuck, why not? You know, where the other guy's like, oh, I don't know. I know specifically who I am. Very in the head, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with jobs. When you look at your boss, you're like, I can't believe this fucking guy is my boss,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, but he's probably so thick. He doesn't even know that.
You actually bring a good point, and I'd like to slide this in here.
Ooh, slowly.
Yeah, he's a- slowly hold it. Just the tip first.
My mind is telling me no.
You guys are terrible.
But my body-
But you bring up a curious point about jobs. What they've found is that women apply for jobs when they meet 90% of the criteria. Men apply for jobs when they meet 60% of the criteria. And this is an interesting point that
Wow.
you need to understand that when you read a job description, it's usually like a 100% wish list of what they hope
Oh, of
like
course.
this person has. So back yourself. If you see a position and you think you're the right fit in it, or if you see a person and you think you might be the right person, the right life partner for them, just back yourself. Take the shot. Like, what do you have to lose? Because the worst thing that could happen in that situation is usually not that bad. You
Right.
might think it's bad, but
What are you
it's
looking at
usually
me
not
for?
that bad.
What the fuck?
But the
Man,
best
I
thing,
shoot my
the
shot.
upside is huge.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's right. And I get the downside all the time. So fuck you, Joe. I still try.
So you mean you're the catcher?
The shit just happened earlier
Oh, wait, what?
today. The shit just happened earlier today. We just had that conversation
We
earlier
did?
today. Yeah. When I told you, I was like, just do it. Just what
Do
are they
what?
gonna tell you? They're gonna kick you out? Like
Oh.
what like
The security thing. But
yeah.
that's different circumstances. There was no real opportunity for me to shoot. There's no reason to shoot my shot. Like
To
there's
get
no there's
You
no
should
reason.
always shoot your shot.
Because the shooting my
you don't want
shot
to go in
part
with a loaded
would
gun,
be-
you know?
the shooting my shot part would be me going up to the security guard and going, hey, these are our passes, of this type and quality. Can you let us in? But I didn't do that. That would be my shooting my shot.
No, just
Yeah.
going for it. Just getting in
That's
without
me
even
going for it.
asking. No,
Hey,
that-
hey,
That's two different. It's two different things.
I want a clean fight. No touching of the hair or face.
I hate you sometimes.
I hate you too.
but I love you.
Oh.
Best
Hey,
friends.
hey, hey, I said I want to hear
Best
that
friends
last.
forever. All right, let's do this right now. Come on. Oh
No,
no,
I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Put that shit away.
Wait. Fuck. But I was gonna
Yes.
add to that. God damn.
Were you?
Back up like
Back
5
up.
minutes.
Say what you said 5 minutes ago, and then we'll just
I
read.
can remember
Double back.
I was gonna chime in. God dang it. It was about
Jobs, 60%
Shooting
versus
your
90%.
shot.
oh yes. Hey, see, it worked.
There we go.
So
Boom.
what's the success rate of the 60% of guys the guys that only have 60% of the qualifications go in for the job compared to the 90% that
Well, I mean,
women what?
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah,
going, so
the
like,
data is still like the data was iffy on that because obviously, acceptance of a job versus apply. Like it's
Mhm.
far easier to get
Mhm.
data on applications
Mhm.
versus. But I believe their preliminary findings was that it was something like maybe a 75-80% acceptance rate for the guys. And the women were slightly higher, but it was like maybe 90-95%. But when you look at the comparison of the characteristics
Right,
of
right,
the job
right. Yeah, that's
description
what I
that they
meant, yeah.
had, that was what it was trying to say. And that's what the data was showing is that these guys who, because they're having that confidence to just
they
go
can
for
have
it,
a lower
go for it.
Yeah,
And this is, this comes back to a sort of a quintessential dynamic that, men, and I realize this is gross overgeneralization, but men generally will display more arrogance and confidence in that. And all I would say is, well, to women, don't feel like I've had female colleagues of mine say, oh, I don't know about this position because, I don't meet like one requirement. I'm like, go for it. And if you do get the job, learn it. Just like figure out whatever that requirement is after the fact.
Right.
Because what do you have to lose?
Mhm.
Like
They'll say
you-
no, and that's it.
They say no, and you don't get the job, and you're exactly in the same position as you were before.
Any job you take, no matter what, even if you're qualified, is still going to take a learning curve that
There's
can
always
only be learned by being, because every company in itself is a unique snowflake. You know what I mean? Like, it really is. And you have
You're
to
a
learn the shit
You're
that's
my
involved in the company. No matter what, you're going to learn something there. So anyone can learn on the fucking job.
Well, they
Yeah,
mostly teach.
yeah. That's
Most
how
of
I
the
learned.
places teach, as far as I know.
I didn't know
It's-
shit.
it's-
That's why
yeah.
hiring is so fucking expensive.
Well,
by
it's-
losing an employee. So
It's
Yeah.
not even just teaching. It's it comes down to like company specific knowledge, which is what Philly's like referring to there. And that's the big thing you lose
Right.
when an employee
Yeah.
goes. It's not so much, you know, the hard skills of what they did, but it's the company specific processes that they knew and they knew inside out. So they could do a task maybe in 2 hours, which now you've got to retrain someone and they've got to figure it out. So you've got months and months in there. And then maybe for a while, it's going to take them a week to do that task rather than 2 hours. So, you know, there's a huge, I believe the estimate is something like you lose an entire salary of
On the
someone
training?
Yeah.
when someone leaves. And
not
that's
to
why
mention putting more of your resources to help guide them at the same time. And now you've got another manager involved there, and it's like, fuck.
So that's why it's funny when people go, oh, like it's expensive to retain, or, you know, why do we put effort into culture or caring about our employees? It's like, it's in your business interest to
it's-
care about your employees.
Absolutely.
Not to sound like a pompous asshole, but
you
when
are
I-
a pompous asshole.
when I,
But I'm going
if
to.
I ever leave the company, it's gonna be tough to replace me because I do a lot.
Joe
of shit
owns the
that-
company.
No, I don't.
He's the undercover CEO. He runs
Shut
that
up.
whole shit.
Odd
He-
flex.
Yeah.
I think
you know.
that's
This isn't
generally
the
the
title.
goal, though, right?
You're supposed to shoot for the shot. Top.
Shot.
What?
Shots.
All right.
We know where Keenan's mind's at.
It's not even about making yourself
haven't had one
irreplaceable or
forever.
whatever. It's just, I mean,
I do want some sushi.
learning as much as you can about the place where you're spending that much time in, and finding out how many other ways you can contribute value
Most
should
people
just be
don't.
our general MO, no matter where we go and what
Right.
we do.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't do that, as
No,
you've
A
seen.
lot of
in
people are
Maven
like
Sprints.
minimum wage, minimum effort, minimum everything,
Mhm.
you know? And
Yeah.
they want to raise the minimum wage. How about we raise the minimum effort? Am I right? If
Pretty
you vote
much.
for me.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean,
Look,
a lot of people expect that. You get that both ways. You get a lot of the employees and people that I've seen heavily. What the fuck? Fuck you.
Just perpetually
I
derailing
know,
Keenan whenever he speaks.
God,
We have
damn.
no respect for Keenan on this podcast.
That's my podcast, the No Respect podcast.
The No Respect.
But
where after the show you do your own podcast where you say all the things you wanted
I
to say.
know.
In fact, that's why
The
That could be your
direct-
content. That could be your
The producer's cut.
yeah. That could be your content.
his Instagram
generator.
content. So what I actually wanted to
That's
say
All
right,
on the
right,
wait,
so
podcast,
we just finished the episode,
Yeah.
but I would just want to
Yeah.
cover a couple of things. That
I
might
got
get
I got a
Fuck
couple of
Joe, fuck
notes,
Philly.
reams of paper.
It's my confessionals that you see.
probably not far
Confession.
from the truth.
That's great. Confessions with Keenan. There's the
So
alliteration.
first of
This
all-
is going to sell itself.
Fuck both of them and Patrick. Fuck them all. No,
All right,
but
so-
it was, I've seen it where employees would want more for the less work that they do, and then also I've seen people or clients and bosses would want what my saying is nowadays is that they expect $1,000 worth of work or productivity for only $100. Like that transition, as we're talking about in the business world, with bosses and employees, and the caringness of what you have under you and people who work above you. What I've seen is the complete 180 of that statement. As we agree in that true statement, a lot of people don't follow that methodology.
But I think a lot of that comes down to stop treating workplaces like adult daycares, right? And this is a big problem that we're still grappling with in corporate America, which is the idea that a manager manages,
Mhm.
right? And often micromanages, really we don't need managers, we need leaders. And anyone can be a leader. And the point of a leader is you're serving your employees to mentor them and provide them with the resources that sets them up for success. And that really starts with giving them the right level of autonomy so that they take ownership of tasks. I've noticed that in every job, when I start getting resistant to doing work, when I start wanting to do less for it, it's because I'm being managed to such a level that I'm not trusted for my expertise. And that is very demeaning to a person. You've been trained in, whether it's through classical education, whether it's through bootstrapping yourself, whatever it is, you've trained yourself in some form of expertise, and you want to be respected for that expertise and allow yourself to demonstrate that in the best way to, as you say, Philly, bring value. So let people do that. Let people the freedom to make some mistakes, try some new things, because that's when you get some real innovation, and that's when you can actually unlock a whole lot more value, not just for the person themselves so they feel, good about the work that they're doing, but also for the company in the long run.
Culture, everything across the board.
Because otherwise, if you're starting to really look at every single little task that they're doing, then they're going to go, well, fine, I'll just sit back and I'll do this task, and maybe I'll do it to the minimum effort, or even worse, maybe I'll start actually sabotaging the company. Maybe I'll really go against company interests, and that gets really dangerous very quickly. And I've seen those toxic work environments.
I'm experiencing something like that currently through some disgruntled people. But I can tell you, I agree with it, because I know as soon as my bosses let me just spread my wings, and that's when the company started flourishing. It opened up so many possibilities, just giving me the go ahead to say, Joe, you make decisions that are in the best interest of the company. So anything that you want to do it, because we know that it's going to help the company. And as soon as they gave me that green light, it was a wrap.
Because that's what they should have hired you for.
And
they hired
what's the point?
Right. It's like they hired you because you were supposedly an expert. So prove that. Treat you as an expert.
Well, it's a little different for me, because when I started, I was entry level. I didn't know anything about the business. I did have sales experience.
I was gonna say, you had some,
but that was my little that was my niche.
They brought me in. Then in that case, you developed the experience over the time you were with them, and that is something that still should be respected.
Yes, which is why he's CEO right now.
We say that,
and then
we're just really gonna jawbone Joe all the way to CEO.
Pretty much.
And then
they're gonna listen to this podcast and think, you know what? Yeah, let's make him CEO.
I'm gonna
Let's
retire
do
early.
Fuck it.
And then there are people who will look at something like that and be like, oh, and they're in the same company. And they're like, well, what about me? And I don't. How come I work just as hard?
And I'm just a janitor. How can I do what Joe does?
Right, and that comes down a lot to also I think the way someone again, the willingness to ask for shit too. A lot I know Joe to be a person who's willing to fucking ask for what he should be getting. He's always willing to. And I edit a podcast called EO Wonder, that focuses on a lot on women entrepreneurship. So when you speak about those numbers, I'm glad to hear them coming from somewhere else, because I hear literal conversations with women entrepreneurs where they talk about also a lot of women entrepreneurs don't ask for, when they work in, even entrepreneurs, when they're working in a company, they don't ask for help. They don't ask for anything because they don't want to be seen as someone that's needy or someone that's weak. And
women have it harder in that respect, because if a man asks for something, he's assertive. If a woman asks, it's needy.
Except
and
for
that
Keenan.
but that comes back to that dichotomy, and that's something that we all as a species need to take a good hard look at.
Absolutely.
We can't be having one rule for men and one rule for women.
Absolutely.
When they're literally doing the exact same thing.
And Keenan, you're saying that when you're assertive, they don't like it?
No, it backfires heavily.
When you're at work?
I get more of a no when I'm more assertive with what I want.
Well, that actually speaks, if I could dovetail it to another part of your performance at work is down to two things. It's down to work-based or performance currency and relationship currency. And it's about 50-50 between the two. So performance currency is literally how good are you at your physical job, the tasks that you do and, the respect that garners within the company. And then the other aspect is relationship currency. And that's how do you make connections within that company? How do you make sure that other people are buying into what you're trying to do for the company? And that kind of ties into your earlier point, Billy, of asking for things and asking for things in a humble way that means, oh, I'm doing this because we all want to make the company better, right? That's ideally what we want out of something. But the key is to balance how much you do of those two aspects. And I mean, I find this very natural as a marketer because so much of my job is reliant on other people. It's reliant on copywriters, it's reliant on developers,
Whole
it's reliant on designers. So that's very natural. But even if you're somewhat of a solo team member
or disgruntled, even just
you can still find ways to make connections. So I tell people, take people out for lunch, or get coffee with people. Just get a happy hour drink with them afterwards.
It's amazing what buying someone lunch will do.
Right. It's such a little thing. It's such a little thing, and we've all got to do it. But just those social bonds make a huge impact in how you work in a company, because at the end of the day, we are still working with humans. Right. We're not working with machines yet.
I mean, we're going to get there soon enough.
Well, I agree with you, humans.
Fuck you both.
Elevating laughter inflection by 30%.
On this episode of Keenan Confessionals.
Keenan's Confessionals.
I just want to shout out Kawhi Leonard for
Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah,
is this an LAFC thing?
No, it's just he's
basketball.
He joined the Clippers.
Oh, sports.
Wait, who are they?
Do you follow sports?
I believe that's only Lakers in this town that anyone cares about. Oh, I've seen those ticket price discrepancies. I know which one the town cares about.
Talk to me. None of you talk to me.
Oh man!
Every time someone mentions sports, it's really bad. I just glaze over. It's the equivalent of someone going, back in my day. Suddenly, I'm like, oh.
Don't want to hear it. Yeah.
I mean, I'm afraid to say that I have many facets to my personality. I love the intellectual chats we have, but I can banter about sports. All sports. I never have an off season, because as soon as one season finishes, then the next one comes around.
But what's the big sport that you can go toe to toe on pretty much any
stats? And
yeah. Is there a particular sport that you just like
What's
by
your
heart?
bag?
It's probably it's probably rugby, soccer.
Rugby's at the one, yeah,
and then American football.
Okay,
nice.
Okay,
yeah. Nice. I mean, I dip in and out of basketball. Honestly, like I'm a big Pittsburgh fan. So, fun little story. So I was introduced to America. What?
So you're a Sixers fan?
No, I hate Philadelphia.
Oh, okay.
It's West Pennsylvania, not East Pennsylvania.
You said you're a Pittsburgh fan, so
yeah, that's West Pennsylvania.
But Philadelphia has the Sixers.
No, but that's the point. We don't like Philadelphia.
Oh.
you can see versus.
Just figured. Right?
So the good news is this is America, and you're entitled to differences of opinion. Right. Joe's like, well, Patrick, I really thought you were a good guy.
Yeah. And now he's like, I'm out.
Yeah. You know what?
Welcome
it was
to
nice
my
having
side.
you.
He doesn't believe in my guy.
Keen in your back.
Rejoice.
So when I was 7 years old, I was introduced to the sport of American football by my grandfather. No one really followed it at that time in Australia. A few people now, but still not so much.
Okay.
He followed it because he's a big, he likes the strategy behind it, how it's essentially a massive chess game played between, 300-pound pieces. He was a big Packers fan because he was a big Union guy, and he liked the fact that the Packers was the only publicly owned team.
Right.
So I start hunting for a team for myself and thinking, as a 7-year-old kid, there really isn't that much that you go off. And the colors of Pittsburgh Steelers are the same as my school, and Hines Ward was playing. I'm like, last name connection. Followed them ever since.
There it is.
Then I learned more about the city, how it's like, Steel City, but slowly, adopting to the new age, becoming this new like tech startup hub. So I really liked that story. So as a result, became a Steelers, Penguins, Pirates fan. And because it doesn't have an NBA team, I'm really just not super into the NBA. I mean, one of my best friends is a Bay Area native, so through that it's a Warriors. But honestly, I'm not super into NBA as a result.
There you go. Yeah. So
sometimes you just just don't make the right moves. So I guess it's good. Good for you. So guys, no, I'm kidding.
yeah.
But I really don't watch American football anymore. I used to, but I'm kind of over it. I'm really just on. Sorry about that. I'm really just right now. I'm just into basketball and the MLS. That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
Tigers, what's up?
Right now, I'm really just into like Donnie Yen winning the soda bottle cap challenge.
Did he though? Did he?
I didn't see any others, to be honest, but just seeing it, man, being able to jump and do a badass kick and unscrew a fucking bottle like without kicking the bottle over. Talk about hand-eye coordination. I mean, see, for me, martial arts has always been my sport. It's just because it's also a solo sport. I have a terrible condition. It's called poor team sport. I'm a bad team member in general. If it wasn't for
podcast.
Yes, if it wasn't for certain obligations in general that go beyond the podcast, it would be hard for me to be a part of anything. I have a really, really, really hard time being interdependent, and I know that it's coming at a cost of a lot of success because individual
teamwork makes the dream work.
Yeah.
Billy.
Right.
Yeah, individual independence is fine. It's a good pinnacle to reach, but it's not the pinnacle. Interdependence is, and it's so difficult for me because I'm very, very. I think it stems a lot from my own, like back in the day the way I was raised, the way I was moved around from home to home, and sort of like I saw like, well, it seems like nobody can really give a fuck about me for reasons beyond. Yeah,
you got to be relying on yourself.
So I've yet to break those shackles entirely from my mind, and I'm working on it. But if anybody out there is listening and you feel like fucking, it's not, this isn't like my main thing I'm saying, but if you really feel like you can't fuck with people for whatever reason, just open up a little, because the only reason I have anything to show for a lot of the things that I do, regardless of my own efforts, is because I've come together with great people. Look at this podcast. If you're enjoying this shit, it's from the ability to open up and be vulnerable to being let down, to being insulted, or to being hurt,
being shut out,
or all the big things that can happen because of it. Alternatively, which is to be extremely happy and have the laughs that we've had, and have the fucking awesome guests that we've had. Like,
we've had some pretty good guests.
Yeah.
Prior to episode 32, I mean, we've had some fucking amazing guests. I'm kidding. You've been great, man. No, but I
see what happens when you do the whole downside of Clippers.
God.
Sorry, again, too many different facets. You'll like some of what I say, and you'll hate the rest of it.
Yeah.
That's the point of this podcast.
Oh, God.
Pretty much.
So yeah, martial arts. How did I get from fucking?
I know.
know.
Why are we talking about?
We were talking about sport.
And I
Right.
zoned
like,
out
Right.
while Billy's talking.
Right.
And he
Yeah.
basically just
Have any of you guys ever taken any at all any
When I
sort
was
of
a kid.
martial sport?
No.
When I was a kid,
Yeah,
my
what'd
parents
you
had me
take?
do karate. You
Dude,
know,
It's fucking lit.
I did it in elementary school. I had all that stuff. I had the whole thing with the belt and all that stuff. It was pretty cool. Then it stopped after a while. I don't know why.
There's something to it. It really is. It's another meditation, if you will. There's definitely something that happened. I'll tell you why. Okay, and this is something subtle that my Sifu never mentioned, but that I started to realize was taking place. So a lot from Krav Maga to Kung Fu to Taekwondo, even karate. There's a thing that's done prior to beginning any training or stretching or whatever, and there's sort of like a salute, if you will, to whatever mentor came before us, right? The sort of the grandfather of whatever, and what happens with that alone, it's sort of like the idea of forming a habit. The minute you do that, it triggers a certain part of your mind. And then when you start doing the same stretches that you always do before you prepare, again, it triggers another part of your mind. And as creatures of habit and triggers, the things that it does for you, honestly, I was never more at my best than when I was doing martial arts because of the inherent discipline it carries, the inherent portions of your mind and character that it turns on. And I imagine that sports in general is a lot like that. When you're on the court, you're never more in the zone, right? You're never more self-aware.
Well, because it's a manifestation of
Yeah.
life in many ways. It has highs and lows. It has, suffering. It has triumphs. And through that adversity, resilience, it teaches all those traits in arguably a low risk environment.
Yeah.
So that it trains your mind to be comfortable taking those risks when it is, not so much of a low risk environment when maybe there are high stakes involved. But that's the thing, and it kind of speaks to your earlier point that we need to take those risks because nothing worth having
Sure.
comes without taking a risk.
Right.
And that we can play it safe. And if you want to live a comfortable life, I am not going to question you on that. All I would ask is that have you consciously thought through, is this the life that you actually want and you're happy with that? Or are you playing small out of a fear of going for something bigger or something different? Not even necessarily bigger, because bigger is not always better.
That's what I tell
Despite
all
what
the
America would have you believe, bigger is not always
all
better.
the girls.
Fucking Texas. I'm looking at you.
That exact speech is how I pick up now.
And there's no age limit to that, right? You can start doing that at 40, 45, 50, 60.
I mean, you always see these stories of what I think it was maybe 3 months ago that it was this Japanese man, I believe, who got himself in shape so he could walk a runway because he wanted to walk a runway just for himself, and he did. And obviously got a lot of rejections. A lot of people that were, no, never doing that. And then someone took a chance on him, but again, he put in that work.
I have heard of that. I don't know how, but it's vague in my mind.
Just
Yeah,
an airplane runway? Just any runway?
No,
No,
like
no,
a
like a
model
fashion,
runway,
yeah.
like a
It's not
fashion
me, but-
runway.
Oh.
Yeah.
I like just where I'm at.
But that's
He's like the oldest male model.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
And that's the point.
Yeah,
What
I do remember that.
right, like whatever that is in your life, whatever that thing is,
Mhm.
and again, it's never too late.
Mm.
But you do need to put in the work, and you do need to put in both the physical work, but also the mental work. And if anything, the mental work is far harder than
Dude,
anything else.
It sounds like we're right at the right place right now because
I was just about to say that.
Yeah,
Pat,
yeah.
I like you, man. I think we're gonna have you back on at some point.
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely.
Who knows
guys.
when, but it'll happen.
This
No,
Maybe
schedule.
during a Clippers victory or something.
Yeah, you know.
Just so you could throw it in your face.
watch an old rugby match or something. We'll see what's going on.
We actually, what do? We have a thing kind of like where you ask a specific thing. We just give people a platform.
What are you doing?
Look at Joe.
Wait,
hell?
Philly can't shoot his shot, Joe?
Joseph said that I'm taking over
This is
the
my
portion.
thing. I'm kidding. All right, yeah, but
Go ahead, Joe.
No, give it to him. Give it to him. Give it to
It's
him.
called a soapbox. And so what that happens is that we give an opportunity for the guests to say whatever they want with no interjection from the other host.
It's your platform.
And it's your platform to talk about whatever.
You can
Hear
you can
ye, hear
you can
ye.
do a shout out. You can drop any of your social media.
You can say you hate women.
talk
It
about
doesn't-
whatever you want. I mean, we know
doesn't
but,
matter.
Not around these here parts.
So you have the floor for as long as you need it. Feel free to talk about
But
whatever. you
not
wanna
long
talk.
enough, like an hour or 30 minutes, right? Because there is like a time limit that they put. So they'll look at you when you have to like finish up.
That's fine. I've just got two quick shout outs.
Nice.
One, if you've enjoyed this at all or want to connect with me about Words with Ward, find me on LinkedIn. So www.linkedin.com/in/Patrick James Ward, all one word. And also, if you're in LA, July 16th, we're having our second LinkedIn Local LA with the fabulous Diana Newen, who is a LinkedIn influencer from Melbourne. So all the way from my home country.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, she's flying out for an American tour. So she asked me, when are you holding LinkedIn Local LA? And I said, when are you in town?
Mhm.
So we've made the dates for that. So it's July 16. It's on Spaces Fairfax at 6:30 p.m. So it's a cool co-working space we got there.
By the
It's
Grove, right?
by the Grove.
Yeah.
It's free, so you got no excuses not to come along to it. You can find the registration Eventbrite link on my LinkedIn.
I think I have something going on that day. So.
It's-
Probably
it's-
some damn
it's-
Clippers
it's-
game.
No, it's the off season right now.
But I still, for some reason, have something.
He's watching free agency.
No, the most important.
I just
one
love
happened, so I'm
contracts,
good.
guys.
I know it's crazy how in depth the NBA free agency has gotten. Like, it's crazy because it doesn't happen like with the NFL. It doesn't happen with a lot of these other sports.
What do you mean free?
Free agencies where teams like buy other players and
Like,
is there a salary cap?
Doesn't that
there
kind
are
of
salary
feel
caps,
kind of like
slavery?
No.
Yeah, it's kind of got the connotations.
Yes, but it also gives the player the option. Like the player can actually choose where they want to go, or if they have an interest in a specific team and things like that.
Because there's still an agent that's negotiating on
Right.
behalf of a player.
I was just like,
But it's just crazy that how big of a deal it is for the NBA because all the other sports don't really
don't
have.
do it?
Yeah, it's not as concentrated as it is with the NBA. Like the media, literally,
it's a firestorm.
do they make more
last
money
week
than all
was-
the other sports players?
No. Baseball does, I believe.
Baseball's
Yeah.
the most.
Yeah.
Really?
But baseball does play the most.
Yeah, they do. But they're talking
But
about
they also
reducing
only
that,
have to be
though.
like 20% on the ball for like the whole. Like I know that much is true. Like they
And
just
you
have to
can still be
20%
60%
good.
body fat.
Yeah.
Still be professional baseball.
No, that's true. That's true. You see some of these hefty guys with the bellies.
That's the old great
pitchers.
American sport.
It's like if you can drink a beer and smash a burger and still get out and crush a home run, we want you.
We want you. Here's 900 million.
I should have been a baseball player. Damn it.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, that's wild shit.
Keenan, do you have a soapbox talk for us?
I don't.
Look at his
But-
body language.
Yeah,
He's,
fuck you all.
he's really
Fuck
unimpressed
everybody.
with
Yeah.
us.
I don't want any part of that. I'm doing Keenan's confessionals. That's my soapbox. I'm doing Keenan's confessional. Fuck the noob. Fuck what noob represents.
And if you're down with new, fuck you too.
For the listeners, the visual
Stop
is
fucking
Keenan
bitching,
crossed
flip
his
the
arms
plane.
and sulking like a little boy.
Money, I didn't travel to any extra destination that wasn't along my original goddamn pathway of doing anything. So that's still going strong. I'm almost done with my drone, which is one thing we talked about as far as not consistency. Oh fuck, what's the word where you have to make sure you do something?
Accountability.
Accountability. So it's good to have this accountability with Philly because I finished the drone that I've had for a whole year. And to speak on the other stuff that we talked about earlier, it's never too late to do something or finish something or start something. I had a drone piece, bought all the parts right off the bat. It only took me 45 minutes to finish it, but I took a whole year to get to that 45 minutes.
Yeah, but you still got it done. And that's
Yes,
what matters.
and that is the point. And that is something that is my soapbox, is that definitely start something that is on your mind, no matter what obstacles you think might be there laid out for you. Even because a lot of engineers will do this, scientists and engineers will think about all the no's and problems and the wrong stuff that could happen before even starting a project or putting out drawings or doing research or going off and actually putting some steps, the baby steps, the 1% steps to get something done. So, and I also want to thank Joe for bringing me to this anime expo because I've never been to one in my entire life. So it's kind of nice. I got a little magazine out of it. So it's pretty cool. Got to see a lot of cosplay stuff, which made me want to build some cosplay things, which is kind of cool. And fuck noob. So
and fuck you too.
Fuck you. Oh, fuck you. Yeah, fuck
And
you.
fuck you, San Diego.
Yeah.
What? No one says that about my city.
Filthy animal. What do you
right.
have for us today?
A lot like
from your
Keenan,
grab bag?
I've been on my own sort
Hey.
of sabbatical. I won't leave you hanging. Give you a high five there. As usual, I have nothing planned, but at the same time, it's because I'm living viscerally my life. And one thing that I really tried to allow is I'm a person who's constantly, like a lot like me, not being able to appreciate shit, as we talked about earlier. I'm also constantly hard on myself. I think so much so that not only am I constantly on the move, but I'm constantly on the move in the wrong way with the wrong fuel. It's like using diesel instead of what your car actually needs, right? I've been pushing myself forward with notions and ideas and energies that just clearly weren't good. It was all critical of myself for being wherever I am. And And the minute I let go of that, I also realized that I had no fucking idea what my real motivations were for anything. But it wasn't until I stopped criticizing myself that I realized I didn't really even know who I was. I was just an amalgamation of all the books I ever read that kept me from really knowing myself. And so, in the same vein as you were saying, it's never too late. I'm only 30, so I know I'm just getting started. And even more than just getting started, I'm a baby egg here. I think it's really important that if you are of the same cut as I am, that you really do stop speaking to yourself that way, and you may not even know you're doing it. And then starting from there and exploring things, because exploring is really the only way you're going to get to know yourself. You start with your body. Really get out there and explore, because that's the only way you're going to find out what helps you get out of bed in the morning. Otherwise, you're going to wake up one day and have a hard time getting out of bed. And then if you're the opposite of that, you're just a person who doesn't ever want to do a goddamn thing. I think it's along the same things. You're just not exploring, and you haven't really put yourself out there enough, made enough mistakes, good ones and bad ones, to really come across something that makes you want to get up. And at this point, I think the only thing I need to be doing, and maybe all of us really for the rest of life, is just seeing what else is out there and taking it in, chewing it, food for thought, right? And then deciding, oh, okay, well, that's what that is for me. Because at the end of the day, it's about what it means to you, whether it's a fact-based object or subject we're talking about, whatever it is. Yeah, it's going to have whatever it actually is, but then it's going to have what you throw onto it. And what's going to help you get out really is what you throw onto it, or how you interact with your environment, not so much how your environment interacts with you. Outside of a natural disaster, really, that's what's going to get you out of bed. As far as I'm beginning to see that really is what fundamentally affects everything we do, at least for me. And I hope that if it does relate to what you guys are doing, that you guys can take that and say, all right, let's reset for a second and see where this is going to take us now.
Preach. I've never known someone who is as hard on themselves as you, Philly, and yet is such an incredible human being with such talent.
Whoa! Slow down.
No, seriously. And this is why I refer business to Philly whenever I get the chance, because I know that whoever I'm referring his way, whether they work together or not, he's going to put his heart and soul into that. And that is a rare quality. You think it's easy because, it's a bit of a cliche, and yet it is so rare to find someone who can put that energy into everything they do. So hats off to you, Philly.
Cool. Hold on. You're going to need a neck brace, Phil. You're going to need a neck brace. Head's getting big. And I'm not talking about the one at the top. Hey.
Still good. Involuntary specimen.
Table rises 2 inches up.
You got a jack right there.
Tremors.
My soapbox talk for this week.
And that's our time for None of Our Business. Well, thanks for joining us. Next week we'll have
You start playing the walk-off music.
Nah, just fuck you guys. All right.
My soapbox talk for this week, and I don't think I've said this before, but even if I have, it's been one of those weeks where I feel like I need to just restate it, because I think it's important. Be kind to others. Be kind to others, just straight up, because you never know. You could see a person every day, like a coworker or a friend, and you just never know what's happening in their personal life. You're not there every day. You're not there at every hour. You're not with them all the time. So you just don't know what type of day or week or month or year a person is having. And for you, even if you yourself are having a negative day, you shouldn't put that on anyone else, because you don't know what type of struggle they're going through. And not just friends, but just people you meet in general. Like if you're in the service industry, and you're having a bad day, you're still in the service industry. You're providing a service. You're providing something to someone else. So you shouldn't project your negative energy to them just because you're having a bad day. So just try to be kind to others at all times, unless they prove that they don't deserve that kindness. Then maybe you can reciprocate with just the
Fat
same amount
dick.
of negative energy. But just in general, just be kind to others. Just be considerate of others' personal lives and what they might be going through, because you just don't know. You don't know, and you could be that straw that breaks the camel's back, per se. Yeah, that's what I got for this week. Just short and sweet.
That's a good
LAFC, we
reminder.
kicked ass. Sorry, LAFC, we kicked ass last night. 6-1, beat the shit out of the Whitecaps. TSG, what's up? LFG, Bongos!
And the U.S. women's soccer team.
Yes, and the
Yes.
women's soccer
It's
team
killing
this morning beat the shit out of the Netherlands. I have nothing against the Netherlands because I love it out there, but we beat the shit out of
Netherlands,
you too.
more like Neverlands. Am I right?
Am I right?
Oh, that's some schoolyard shade.
This has been
Yes.
episode 32.
Next
of
week.
the None of Our Business podcast.
Next week will be us, and then we'll have a guest the week after. Subscribe, follow us on Instagram, YouTube, any type of social media. Contact us, communicate with us. We do more than just this podcast. We can really get close and talk to you. But thank you. Thanks for listening. This is the None of Our Business podcast with Joe Castellanos, Philip Lanos, Ina Duncan, Patrick Ward, and friends.
Yeah. Here's the story, all about how my life got flipped, turned upside down. No.
Fuck it.
Eat your woman out.
Suck your man's dick.
And pet your dog.
Love you.